Suddenly, I heard a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door.
Another Halloween Schlock and All, the double feature podcast that celebrates all movies from the slimy to the ghoulish. As always, I'm Lindsay Wilkins, and this week we're going to be taking a deep dive into Dimension, the double of Steve Miner's Halloween H20 and Alex Pyros's The Crow, of course, 1994. This was an episode where I got all the nostalgia feels, and with me to look at the good times, and, well, before we saw them for what they were, but still, good times. It's one of the most amazing meatheads from Action for Everyone. It is, of course, Michael Scott. Hey, how's it going?
Hi, Linz. How are you today?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for coming on for this.
No, thank you. Thank you. As soon as you pitched this to me, I was like, yes, absolutely, 1000% yes, for, multiple reasons that we'll get into. But yes, no, thank you so much.
No, I had a sneaking suspicion that one of your favorite movies is The Crow, and I knew that this would work with H20, just actually a little better than I realized at the time. But no, this is going to be an amazing double. And then you said, oh my God, this is going to be so Dimension. And I went, oh my God, you're right. They're both very much 90s Dimension movies.
I guess technically, before some pedants decide to correct us, technically The Crow is Miramax, but it was basically the start of Dimension because it was so successful. They spun off into Dimension. So I still consider The Crow to be absolutely 100% a Dimension movie. And Dimension was something. Dimension, we'll definitely talk about it.
Oh yeah. Dimension, yeah, it feels more Dimension than it is Miramax, but you're right. Technically the Miramax thing did come up before The Crow, but oh my God, this feels so goddamn Dimension, which is probably because they copied it 60,000 times after The Crow. But before we get into this double, Mike, Action for Everyone has kind of skyrocketed. I mean, you've even been quoted by The Independent, for God's sakes.
Yeah, that was fucking weird. We've had some, it's funny. Nobody ever really talks about like podcast numbers and stuff like that. I don't know why it's so taboo, but nobody ever does. But we've had some pretty good success, and yeah, we got quoted by The Independent. Liam technically got quoted by The Independent, but they shouted us out.
Yeah.
And we've had some really nice download numbers. We've had some really terrific guests lately. A couple weeks ago, at the time we're recording, a couple weeks ago, we had Daniel Bernhardt on, which was one of, like, if you had told me, like, 18-year-old Mike that 20 years later he would be meeting Daniel Bernhardt, I would have punched you in the face and called you a dirty, dirty liar. So it's kind of wild to me that this guy that I have followed for 30 years, I met, and not only did I meet, but like got them into, like, him and Liam into like a fucking flex off. Like our show is so absurd and so ridiculous.
Yeah. And then Vice comes in and beats them, which I thought was the most amazing thing.
It was amazing. It was amazing because you can't stop the Vice. You just cannot stop the Vice. nobody will ever be able to stand up to Vice. That's just all it is, and literally just yesterday at the time we're recording, so it will be out at the time you release this, I did a solo episode with the almighty Scott Adkins where we talked about Accident Man 2, which at the point this comes out, I will no longer be embargoed. So I can tell you, Lindsay, I think it's fucking great. It might be the ultimate Scott Adkins experience.
Oh, wow.
I don't think it's not necessarily his best movie because Universal Soldier Day of Reckoning still exists.
It does.
But it might be the one that is the most him. It's an absolute top 5 Adkins movie for sure. We had an absolute fucking blast talking about it. Everybody listening, if you haven't seen it, because it will be out by the time you hear this, you really have to watch Accident Man 2. It's fucking terrific. So, yeah, we've had some good times lately.
No, I mean, the Daniel Bernhardt episode was amazing. He felt like he was just like part of the show. It was just like, oh, is he coming on next week as well? This is great. But no, this is great. I know that you've been looking forward to Accident Man 2 for forever. So to hear that it is this good, I am very excited because I only just saw the first Accident Man like a couple of months ago, and I was just like, oh, that's actually really solid. And then you see the one fight I think he has with Michael J. White and that other guy, and you're like, holy shit, actually believe in gravity.
Yeah, no, and this one is better than the first one. Yeah, and I love the first one, but this one is better than the first one in every way. And just to go back to the Bernhardt thing, yeah, I have met it's not like I'm like some highfalutin guy who's industry tied in, but I've met enough celebrities between Sundance and podcasts. I very rarely get starstruck. When we were recording on Zoom, because we do video, when Daniel Bernhardt popped up, I literally went speechless for like 20 seconds because I was like, oh my God, this is one of the most like perfect specimens of human being I have ever seen in my life. It was insane actually seeing him on my computer monitor and being like, I'm fucking talking to this guy. Like, it was crazy.
You were surprisingly a little bit more quiet on that episode, but I think you were just taking it all in.
I was. I literally had no idea how to like even try and, talk to this guy because, as big of a fan of Adkins as I am, he's my favorite actor. I've been a fan of Bernhardt for 10 years longer. I think Bloodsport 2 came out and I want to say like 1992, 1993, something like that.
Something like that.
Like, I have followed this guy's career for 30 goddamn years. And so like, it just was wild to me that I'm like, how am I actually even talking to this guy right now? And I have to shout out, it's all that part of it is all Liam. Liam has the connections. Liam has worked with these people, and he really does like highlighting these people who don't necessarily get to go on podcasts and stuff like that. We've had VFX artist Joshua Cortez. We've had practical effects artist Alan Hold on. These are people that are not necessarily having podcasters beating down their doors. And that's one of the things that I love that we do is like trying to highlight all the people that do indie action stuff and the roles they play and the difficulties that they deal with. So yeah, it's been a good couple of months for the show. I can't lie. I'm going to pat myself on the back just a little bit because it's been a good couple of months for the show. No,
it's been amazing just to see you watch it grow and just the fact that you haven't lost that retaining goofing around kind of thing. Because as much as Liam tends to be the biggest clown on the show, you can tell that because he had his VFX background with Predator v Alien Requiem or whatever it's called, you can tell he cares about kind of everything in the background, from like cinematographer to how you edit to even he's mentioned like extras and kind of things like that. You can tell that that's the stuff he actually really cares about, not just everything that's in front of him.
Well, he also, this is a little bit behind the curtain and I can't give too many details, but, he hasn't made a movie since Skylines. And the amount of false starts and stops he's had over the last couple of years have just been staggering. And so I think it is one of those things where, yeah, he really does want people to understand, when an independent movie, be it independent horror, independent action, whatever, it comes out and it's not very good, he wants people to understand that there's a lot of reasons why it might not be very good. And so when you do get one, like say, for instance, Section 8 that just came out with Ryan Plant and Scott and stuff. Why the fact that that movie is as good as it is, and it's not perfect, it's got some issues, but why that movie is as good as it is actually a goddamn miracle. And so that's one of the things I really love about doing this show, is being able to say, hey, yeah, you know what? Sometimes indie movies, they miss. They don't have but you need to understand why they miss. And it's a lot of times it's not a lack of talent and not a lack of dedication. It's a lack of resources. It's a lack of, we talked about this when we talked about Day Shift, that J.J. Perry, the director of Day Shift, was talking about the greatest currency for him as a director is shooting days. He doesn't give a shit about budget, but he gives a shit about his time, because he can work around budget, but working around time
you can't do
really hard, and so if you want to cut his budget but give him 10 more shooting days, he's great with that. That's fine. And so that's the kind of stuff that we really do try and highlight. No,
that's what I love about it, is that you guys kind of dig into, it's hard to make a movie, no matter if it is 200 million or 200,000. You're going to run into the same problems. At 200 million, you can fix them way more quickly than on a 200,000 budget. But it is kind of highlighting that, movies are hard to make. They never go as completely planned. And it also is going into never look at maybe try not to look at the budget when you're judging a movie. Look at sort of everything around it. And that's kind of what I love about it. Indie horror screams about that all the time, but you don't get the same with action, because we've been taught that action needs to look a certain way. And the fact you're like going, no. When you're looking at how you make these movies, it's insane. It's hard. And if they don't come up great, there are reasons behind it. You give more allowances to indie horror, but you don't give that to more anything else. So maybe we should use all the rules and all the kind of things to actually look at a movie the same way.
Yeah, no, and that's a perfect way to describe it, because it's like, we're in October, there's so much indie horror out there and people watch, and it just feels like for some reason people just poo-poo indie action in a way that they're much more forgiving of indie horror, which is part of just the fact that horror is a bigger genre. It's got more fans.
Yes.
But also, it's like, well, be that forgiving. Nothing bothers me more than when I hear a criticism of an indie action movie of somebody saying, oh, well, I could tell they weren't even, coming close on the punches or the kicks. And I'm like, well, motherfucker, they're still throwing jumping spin kicks. Can you do that? So, I'm sorry that it came a couple inches short of the dude's face, but you still have somebody that's doing a jumping roundhouse kick. Give a little credit for the talent of the people that are working on it to even be able to get it that good. Yeah,
especially the injuries and what these people have to go through to actually do that spin kick. It is amazing. People sort of forget, no, those are really hard things to do. You have to train for years. And these people do it because they love it. It's not like they're getting paid all this amount. I still saw this whole which is probably going to annoy the snot out of you, make Scott Adkins Bond. It's that would be great, but don't you know how the industry works?
Yeah, no, that's just not even, that's what's so funny about stuff like that, is that's not even an option. He's not even on the radar. Hey, first of all, he's 46 years old. He's way too old. And, they're talking somebody going early 30s at this point. And also, he's never, he's not even on the radar. And to be honest with you, I'm sure he would take it because of course he wants the paycheck, but that's not really ever been, he wanted to be Van Damme. That's why he broke into the film industry. That's who he wanted to be. So, I think something honestly, and I don't want to put words into his mouth, but I think what he would, instead of being Bond, he'd rather have a budget for Accident Man 2 that's $25 or $30 million than $5 million.
Yeah.
Give him the budgets to make the movies that he wants to make instead of making him Bond.
Yeah, though with the Bond thing, it's always like they always go, this guy should do it. I'm like, that guy's not going to do Bond. He's way even above Bond. He's not going to get stuck in a 5-movie contract. It's all these like Idris Elba and Tom Holland's. I'm like, and they're not doing Bond. This guy's calm down.
Tom Holland's Spider-Man. He's not doing Bond.
He's not doing Bond.
Yeah.
All these guys you're mentioning are fine. Like they really choose. They either went for TV actors before TV was the ghetto, or they chose someone who was newer. They don't go for really established guys who have their own franchises.
And I don't know. I got into a little Twitter kerfuffle over this because I was like, why do you want these people to get sucked up into Bond? Let an actor who doesn't have that much, like everybody has been championing Idris Elba for Bond. And again, he's too old, but it's like Idris Elba does really interesting work. Why do you want him to disappear into Bond for 15 fucking years? Like, make it an actor that nobody's heard of. Nobody, introduce a new actor into Bond. Because I don't want. Like, I see a lot of people say they want Sopa Dirisu from Gangs of London, and I'm like, Sopa Dirisu has way more interesting shit ahead of him than playing fucking James Bond. And I love Bond. I'm not shitting on Bond. I'm just saying he's got a way more interesting career ahead of him than playing Bond. John Boyega has a fascinating career ahead of him, unless he gets sucked up into playing Bond.
Which actually I hope not. Anyway, I'm still looking forward to the Bond movies because I'm not shitting on Bond. I adore Bond. But can we just remember the ruckus that would happen when Daniel Craig was cast? No one really knew who he was, and he was blonde. So I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Ginger Bond, how dare they? Yeah, I remember. And and everybody who'd seen Layer Cake was like, well, this is actually fucking perfect. He's going to be great. But no. Yeah.
And he was. Yeah, even in movies I don't like, even in movies of his I don't like in Bond, I still like him as Bond. So, yeah. But before we get completely sidetracked, we need to go to another icon who actually doesn't really matter it does play who plays him, but he tends to have a mask. Even in this one, it made him look like Butthead a little bit. Not the worst mask in the franchise, I have to say, with Halloween. But we might as well get into the incredibly 1998 Halloween H20. Now, before, as I like to imagine, the curtains are opening. Mike, what is going to be your first trailer for Halloween H20?
So I really, I came up with some trailers for our next movie pretty quick, but this one I really kind of went back and forth on. And so for my first trailer, I really did want to keep that like late 90s Dimension vibe going.
Oh yeah.
And so and this might be one that you came up with too, so hopefully we have some extras. But my first trailer had to be the 1998 Robert Rodriguez, Kevin Williamson scripted The Faculty.
The students at Harrington High have always suspected their teachers were from another planet.
Is this going to be on the test?
This is the test.
This time, they're right. Now, these 6 students won't just question authority. They'll have to destroy it. Critics are calling it hip and scary. A thrilling ride from beginning to end. The Faculty.
Please report to the principal's office.
I did have another dimension. Not quite that one, but that is absolutely perfect. I mean, you cannot get more goddamn 1998 than that.
I mean, every once in a while on Twitter, it pops up the Tommy Hilfiger ads with the cast of that show rocking all their Tommy clothes, and it is just totally such. But I absolutely fucking adore The Faculty. I think that is, and I love the sort of behind the scenes that was the one for them, one for me. Rodriguez agreed to make that so that they would Dimension would let him make Once Upon a Time in Mexico. And but I fucking adore The Faculty. It's got a great cast. It's Elijah Wood, on the upswing before he becomes Frodo.
Yep.
Just a good old fashioned sci-fi monster movie, again written by Kevin Williamson, who wrote Halloween H20 and another movie that I'm certain we're going to talk about. We can't have a conversation without talking about it.
You can't. It's going to happen.
Yeah. But I also think the trailer would just play great going into this. It would just give that right kind of vibe for kind of what these movies are, how they feel. There's just a look to these late 90s Dimension movies. And it's almost, we bitch about how Netflix movies all look the same. Well, late 90s Dimension movies all look the same. But for whatever reason, I love the look of late 90s Dimension movies, whereas I hate the look of like Netflix movies. I can't explain it. It's not rational, but I see a late 90s Dimension movie and it just feels like a warm blanket to me.
It really does. I had that in my notes. I was like, all Dimension movies, especially in the late 90s, look the same, but yet I hate a Netflix, how it looks. There's a distinct look that I just don't like as well, and I don't know how to explain it, but there's something... just because I was probably 16 at this age and just going, or 17, just going, yes, this is what I want. I mean, the cast of The Faculty is amazing. Not even, it's even the teachers. Like you have Ivanka Jameson, you have the Terminator, I can't remember his name.
Robert Patrick.
Patrick. I think Jon Stewart pops up. Yeah.
Yep.
And then you have the kids, and it is just this amazing kind of alien body snatchers, everything sort of going on, and the casting's really smart. This is when, speaking of directors who prefer to work with a lower budget, but all the shooting days so they can have control over what they're doing. This is Rodriguez going into the machine and going, okay, yeah, I'll make your movie, so I can go make my Spy Kids franchise later on down the line. And but it just works, and it's, a lot of it, is that Kevin Williamson script. I don't know how to describe it, because I think if you're showing it now to maybe a lot younger, they're like, people don't talk like that. And we're like, we know. But we did try in the 90s to talk like that.
Yeah, we totally did try in the 90s to talk like that, right? I mean, this is the creator of Dawson's Creek. Like, we totally tried to talk like that. And the other thing I will say, and this is something that's going to come up when we actually talk about the movie, the other secret weapon that the Faculty has is Josh fucking Hartnett, who is so goddamn dreamy circa 1997, 1998. And so, like, perfect mix of, like, brooding but funny but sensitive, like he's like fucking Gerard Way before My Chemical Romance came out, so he's even better in The Faculty than he is in Halloween H20, and his haircut's even actually somehow worse in The Faculty than it is in Halloween H20. And so I just think that connection would play really well. Yeah,
because as soon as you mentioned The Faculty, I was like, his hair's even more insane than it is in Halloween. I don't know how that happened. It is. The Faculty just has one of those, as we'll get into when we talk about both of these movies. The casts are insane. It's just, you're just watching it, and this is ultimate comfort food for me. I remember going to see this in the theater. It is just, this is like the kind of the perfect tone to get us in. Okay, so I'm probably going to do I'm going to do this one first. There's a theme that I kind of am bringing through to both these movies, where they are going to be linking in anyone's brain or not. And it helps that Jamie Lee Curtis is talking about this movie, and it does become kind of a theme. But I'm going to go for the 1994 version, but Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, directed by Kenneth Branagh.
No one need ever die. I will stop this. No, you can't achieve death. We won't know unless we try.
I warn you, what you are suggesting is not only illegal, it is immoral.
What's happened to you? Yes. That's the combination.
This was in this also other weird 90s trend where they were just remaking all the Universal monster movies, but making them adult pristine. This is thanks, of course, to Dracula. But they did all go through all of them. Even Hollow Man got directed by Paul Verhoeven. And yeah, it's just this another weird trend in the 90s that you look back and go, and most of those movies actually made money. That is weird. This is not my favorite Frankenstein adaptation by far, but I think it does have some interesting stuff going on, considering you do have De Niro playing the monster and Kenneth Branagh playing Frankenstein. And yeah, it is a fascinating movie, even if I don't think it completely works.
Yeah, I think I haven't seen it since maybe 94 even. I didn't see it in the theater, but it came out when I was working at Blockbuster. So I'm sure I used one of my free rentals on it. And that's kind of, I feel like, a pretty accurate way to describe it. I don't think it entirely works, but it's still Branagh. So it still is kind of fascinating, right? Like it looks great. It does have very gothic sort of, shout out to our boy Daniel Epler. It's got very gothic vibes.
Oh,
to
yes.
it. And so, but I remember not particularly loving it, but I think it's a fascinating trailer to sort of play here because it is just, the 90s were just so weird, man.
Yeah, we didn't appreciate I think we did in some respect because we all love the 90s indie boom, like thanks to Tarantino and, of course, Rodriguez, you mentioned before, and all that kind of thing. But I don't think we appreciated everything else that was happening. Like, this is something that would never happen again. They were just throwing things at the wall to see what stuck. I don't know. They weren't spending on all the cocaine that they were in the 80s, obviously, but they were just really trying really weird stuff to see if it would stick. And it's never going to happen again. I can't see us ever going back to this time. But we got Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, directed by Kenneth Branagh, and I haven't seen it for a few years, but I do remember the whole birth of Frankenstein's monster is much more visceral and organic and very much, hey, a man is giving birth to that.
Yeah, it's very ooey gooey.
Yes.
Yeah, very ooey gooey. And again, Branagh coming off, this is one of those times where you've sort of got almost kind of like what you see with the MCU. You've got Branagh coming off some very indie movies, 90s indie movies like his Henry V and stuff. And then he gets, this sort of blank check, big budget studio movie, and he goes all in on it. I mean, he, for whether it works or not, you can't deny that Branagh goes all in on this movie.
He really does. I mean, if you're going to have like a gooey kind of thing or just all kind of gothic, but yet completely murderous and violent, and then still trying to give the monster pathos, it's too much like all at once, but from my memory, but you can't deny that Branagh was doing a thing.
Branagh was doing a thing. No question about that.
What is going to be your second trailer for H20?
So my second one is one that is a movie that I actually don't particularly like all that much, but I think it's a nice contrast. So I'm actually going to go with Halloween 2018.
Everyone in my family turns into a nutcase this time of year. Yeah, I mean, your grandmother is Laurie Stroud. She was almost murdered.
Wasn't it her brother who murdered all those babysitters?
No, it was not her brother. That's something that people made up.
Do you know that I pray every night that he would escape?
What the hell did you do that for?
So I can kill him.
Dad, look out!
The bus crashed.
Mom, what bus crash?
Michael escaped.
Because this has been and this is going to ruffle some feathers, I do not like the new Halloween trilogy. Well, I haven't seen Halloween Ends yet, so I don't know. Maybe it can stick the landing, but I feel like it's kind of weird that we're getting 3 movies to do what Halloween H20 does in one movie. And so I think it would be an interesting contrast to play the trailer for Halloween 2018 before people go into H20, especially if they've seen 2018 but haven't seen H20, to be like, oh wow, this movie's it's 86 minutes long and it does exactly what these movies do in 6.5 hours.
Which seems to be a trend of the movies, how movies work at the moment. But yeah, pretty much. I think it was actually, speaking of Daniel Lepperl again, he mentioned, when we get into sort of H2O, H2O has amazing Laurie, but not great Michael. But 2018 has good Michael, but terrible Laurie. And I would kind of agree with that. I don't mind 2018. I think there's a few things to it that I kind of like. Like, it reminds me vaguely of Jason Goes to Hell, just because it's very episodic. And just some weird sort of stuff. You're like, oh, okay. Like, the whole Satine stuff I do kind of enjoy. Kills I have issues with, and
yeah. No, that's the thing. That's why I picked 2018, because I don't mind 2018. I don't love it, but I don't mind it. I fucking absolutely detest with every fiber of my being Kills. I know, Hayden and Mark, if you guys are listening, I'm sorry, but I cannot stand Kills, so I didn't want to program the Kills trailer, but I thought 2018 makes a nice contrast, just because, again, most people, I work with trauma victims as part of my job, and trauma victims typically don't become doomsday preppers. They become alcoholics and overbearing parents. And so to me, Laurie in H2O feels much more authentic than Laurie in 2018. I do agree Michael in 2018 is better. The Michael in this, and we'll get into that, isn't great. But the Laurie feels much more authentic to me.
Yeah, and I want to be more on Laurie's side than I am on Michael, if Laurie is in the picture. And yeah, this is kind of how you deal with trauma. I mean, we'll get into all these kind of great moments that she has in it that is just, oh, this is why Jamie Lee Curtis is a movie star kind of thing. It just, you have to watch, if you wonder why Jamie Lee Curtis is like a thing, you watch this movie and you're like, oh yeah, because she's goddamn amazing. Even in a movie I know you have issues with that I kind of love despite of its issues, True Lies, and it's mainly because of Jamie Lee Curtis in that movie. I think she's incredible.
Yeah, what she's asked to do, I think, is abhorrent, but she's absolutely tremendous in that movie. There's no question.
Exactly. So I think Halloween 2018 is a really good pinpoint, because when I was talking to Rob, he sort of mentioned how Halloween loves its anniversaries. Like, you've got 1998, you've got this 1998, and then, of course, 2018. And this is kind of that touchstone, and I think even Halloween H2O does that touchstone way better than I think it does in 2018, which they tried to make it more random. But yeah, no, that is, and Hayden, Mark, you will get your chance to defend Kills. I know I've been bashing on it for the whole series. You will get your chance, and yeah, so that is an absolutely amazing trailer. Look, I'm just going to go for my final trailer. I'm going to go for my Dimension, one that I think is just so God Dimension it actually hurts sometimes, and that is The Phantom, or Phantoms, I think, from 1998.
I guess it's kind of cute, in a dorky sort of way. Is it always this quiet?
No, it isn't.
No one's really out there.
He's just trying to bait us, like your deputy at the inn.
Show yourself.
Have like you fucking ruling, Fancy. Or no, you were the bomb. Yeah, sorry, I got the quote wrong. I fucked it up. Have like you were the bomb in Phantoms.
This movie is freaking bizarre, but it is just, I can't, when I was watching it, I was like, has there been ever a movie to dimension this hard? It is, of course, directed by Joe Chappelle, who directed, of course, Curse of Michael Myers. But yeah, Ben Affleck, Liev Schreiber, Peter O'Toole, Rose McGowan. I mean, this is a weird town doing weird things, and you watch it, and it just seems, Dimension movies tended to be glossy. This movie is so glossy that they're almost sparkling. I don't know how else to describe it. Even Peter O'Toole is like, kind of, is he glowing? I don't know how they lit this.
You can even tell, if you even look at the posters, because obviously, we'll talk about how The Crow kind of started Dimension, but the reality is, Dimension became Dimension because of Scream.
Yeah.
And if you look at the poster for Phantoms and the poster for Scream and even the poster for they're all like knockoffs of the Scream posters. Like Phantoms poster is literally this beautiful cast, like all kind of standing in a line, going back. Like, yeah, Phantoms is such a Dimension movie. It might be the most Dimension, like you said, the most Dimension movie to ever Dimension. It's crazy, but not bad actually. Not a terrible movie, I don't think.
No, not a terrible movie, but you do get. I mean, I just always remember that poster more than I ever remembered the movie. And actually, going back to The Faculty, I've been really annoyed because Usher, very beautiful man, on the poster for The Faculty, he's in it for like 10 minutes. I'm like, where's Usher? Back in when I did not realize that they would just put people on the thing to make you go see the movie. But yeah, everyone is so beautiful. Everyone's peak beautiful in this movie. It is sort of like a weird aliens. I can't remember what Phantoms is about, actually. I forgot to watch the trailer beforehand, but all I remember is just images from it and everyone just being incredibly good looking.
Yeah, it actually has an actress that I thought really should have gone on to bigger things, Joanna Going. She's terrific, and she kind of just sort of disappeared. But yeah, it was it's definitely a Dimension movie. I think the trailer would definitely play well.
Yeah, and once we get into that, we're going to be getting into, well, yeah, as we said, a movie that without Scream, we would never have gotten H2O, primarily because they had to get Kevin Williamson in to punch up the script. But he wrote it, essentially. I mean, this is his movie as much it is as Steve Miner's. But yeah, we might as well get into the gloriousness that is Halloween at H2O.
Got mail.
Birthday card.
It's only 2 months late. I'm impressed.
Cash is good. I'm gonna need it when I go to Yosemite.
You're not going?
No, I'm going to Yosemite.
No, you're not.
Look, I know today is the day, but I think...
Oh, really? What day is that, John?
Halloween.
Oh, I hadn't noticed.
Mom, we're through with all that.
Ronnie, the phones are out.
There's a strange car parked down at the gate, but I can't seem to find any signs of trespassing.
What are you doing?
Hey.
I'm just gonna go find John.
Go to the dogs. We're gonna call the cops.
Here, here's the door. Lock it.
I know I saw this in a theater opening day. I was really excited. I was still on my Scream high. As soon as I knew Kevin Williamson was involved, I was like, I'm going to try and speak like these people. I'm going. I'm assuming you went to see this at the movies?
Oh yeah, opening day, because I was already maybe my earliest horror movie that I ever saw was Halloween. I saw it way too young, so I was a Halloween fan my whole life. I've always been. It's weird. It's actually funny. My wife was just asking me about this because we're decorating for Halloween, and she was asking, do I like Michael or Jason more? And I was basically saying, well, I like Jason more, but I think Halloween movies are by and large better than Friday the 13th movies. But I think, Jason's just so iconic. But I was a big Halloween fan. And so the idea that Jamie, I had seen 4, 5, and 6 in the theater. And so then the idea that Jamie Lee Curtis was coming back and they were ditching 4, 5, and 6 and just making it a direct continuation of 2, which wasn't the original plan, but that's what they decided to do. And I think that works better. So yeah, I saw it opening night and I fucking loved it. I mean, I was on the Scream high. It's totally a post-Scream Halloween. Rewatching it the other day for this, the thing I realized more than even the cast and the dialogue, one of the things that made Scream so great was how much Ghostface actually gets his ass kicked throughout that entire movie. You know, I mean, he's just getting punched in the face and knocked down on all sorts of stuff throughout that movie. And Michael does that in this, which is probably why people like Daniel say it's not a great Michael, because Michael gets punched a lot in this movie.
He really does. And yeah, that's probably why Daniel says it's not a great, because Michael is kind of meant to be weirdly infallible, like which is the weird contrast, which is kind of why I think I agree with you. Jason's better because you at least know Jason's kind of magical, even from the second one. Like even when he's like a weird woodsman with a sack on his head, he came up from the lake. There's something already squiffy about him. Michael's just meant to be a dude, so the fact, and it's got this, which is why they keep trying to make him like controlled by wizards, which I still think this is happening in Kills. There's something that's inherently supernatural about him, but he's not allowed to be supernatural. So yeah, when you see Michael Myers getting beaten up quite a bit in this movie, which is a very Scream thing to do, because when you watch Scream and you realize what's happening in it, I find that funnier because I know who's under the mask. But this one is, yeah, there's a weird disconnect with that. But yeah, he gets punched in the face a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He is not this like creepy, eerie boogeyman that he is in the first one. And I totally get that. But I feel like a little bit at like the point we've hit H20, it's like, well, who cares? I mean, he's been powered by druids and all this stuff, and you know, and then we get to 2018 and Kills, and there they like eliminate almost all the mystical stuff except for somehow like evil. I don't know.
Will not die tonight. I mean, because as more he kills, the more, which is why I think the druids are coming back in ends.
So to me, for the thing with H20 is I love this idea that he's sort of, you know, coming, but you almost get this sense that he's been a little depowered because it's been too long, and I think it makes it interesting that when Laurie finally powers up, which is my favorite scene in the movie.
Oh, it's so good.
It's like, okay, all right, now we're gonna do this shit. And that's, you know, Scream very much did that. You know, Sidney fucking Prescott is a goddamn action hero, and Scream really did that. And then that's one of the things I love about Kevin Williamson is in his movies. He likes horror movies. He wants them to be scary, but he believes in heroes. He believes that good will beat evil. And that's why I typically love his movies so much. And this one is absolutely in that vein.
Yeah, we might as well just get into Scream, because we're going to keep comparing this movie to Scream, because you have to, because it is very much a post-Scream movie. And I was there for all of them. Urban Legends, this, I Know What You Did Last Summer, even Valentine, I was all there. I couldn't get enough. But the point that you made about Kevin Williamson's powering up his heroes is an absolute truth. I mean, you can always see the switch in Sidney Prescott when she decides, okay, fuck this, I've had enough. I need to get these scumbags because they've just been terrorizing me kind of for so long, and I didn't know it was happening. And that is why Sidney Prescott is such a great final girl, because you can see that switch. And how H20 does it as well. As soon as you see Laurie going up the hill with that axe, you're like, yes!
I mean, that fucking scene, Kelsey was laughing at me because I literally launched out of my fucking chair when she smashes the lock on the gate with, you know, she's got the axe, she smashes the lock on the gate, and she turns around, she goes, Michael, and the full theme that we haven't really heard other than the opening credits, full blown kicks in. Like, I fucking just fist pumped myself right out of my goddamn chair. That scene is so fucking cathartic and so, like, just satisfying that it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, I get each to their own, but I'm like, how does that not just make you feel like so filled with movie love when you see that happen?
It's a movie style moment, and Jamie Lee Curtis already knows how to do that moment. She's done it so many times during her career. So she's like, yeah, I know how to play this. Steve Miner knows how to shoot the shit out of it, because that is what he does. And it is such one of those great moments, because, and she plays it so well, because beforehand she is barely keeping it together. She's kind of just, even when I love that scene when she's telling Arkin, I'm Laurie Strode, and he's just, is he eating when he's kissing her? Like, he keeps chewing.
Yeah, he keeps chewing. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, dude, gross. It's like 15-year-old shit. What are you doing? It is, but he doesn't believe her, and it's this process of like, oh wait, she's not weirdly Halloween flirting with me. She's actually trying to share a moment of this is who I am, and this is him realizing, oh wait, this is her committing to me by telling me all her shit and why she's the way she is, and I just met Laurie Strode. It's she plays that so well, so when you do get that moment by the gate, all that kind of stuff, like the scene in the cafe and her interactions with his John and all that kind of thing just kind of come together. She's like, yeah, Evil's gonna die tonight. But she doesn't say it like that. She just like screams Michael, and then you get the theme kicking in and you're like, yes, let's go.
Well, and especially because if you're just taking 1 and 2 together, Laurie was, obviously Laurie is kind of the prototypical final girl.
Yes.
She's the old school final girl that survived.
Yes.
And I feel like, and there are others, I'm sure there are plenty of other final girls, but Sydney, I think, really set the mold for the final girl that lives, not the final girl that survives, the final girl that says, fuck it, I am going to live.
Yeah.
And I am going to win. And so, yeah, you really get this sense of like, Laurie has had a fucking enough. She's almost relieved that Michael is there, because it's like, I've been hiding. I've been drinking my sorrows away. I've been fucking up my relationship with my son. I've been fucking up my relationship with my boyfriend because I'm so terrified that this boogeyman is, somewhere in the corner waiting to come back. And it's like, now he's fucking here. Yeah, now I can do something about this. I don't need to be afraid anymore. And that is so goddamn satisfying to me. I can't even, I'm like kind of like losing my shit here, Linz, because it's just so satisfying to me.
It is incredibly satisfying. And I think it's sort of going back to Scream, I think it says a lot when you have Wes Craven working with Kevin Williamson, because Wes Craven created Nancy Thompson, who does that same thing. She's like, I don't just survive, I live. I'm going to fuck this guy. I'm going to bring him into my world. I'm going to try to get everyone organized. Even toward the end, when she's screaming at her father, he still doesn't believe what's happening, but I'm going to take care of it. And he films Sydney in the exact same way. And then you just get Kevin Williamson coming in going, oh no, I want to write the ultimate heroine. I'm going to write the ultimate kick-ass, rises to the occasion, is not going to put up with this shit, because I still think Scream is this massive series on misogyny. But I'll have to get into that when I actually if I ever do something on Scream. But it is, and it's just this kind of, no, I'm not going to take it anymore. And it's constantly through Kevin Williamson's horror movies. And I think it's really great. I think it just works so well, because I know when we talked about Evil Dead 2, we talked about that hero moment. And that is a hero moment. It's like, no, she's going to go vanquish evil. She's going to stand up to her brother, something she kind of wishes that she could have done back in 1981 with Halloween 2, which she never did, because she just survived. She survives. She has to keep waiting for Loomis to come along, and Loomis is not here in this one, so she's got to take care of it. And yeah, it is the thing of the movie, and this movie's only 86 minutes. I mean, it is short.
So efficient. It moves so fast, and that's the other thing that I think is really clever in this, is because she's not just now fighting to survive. She's fighting to live because she's fighting for John. And so unlike when she was a kid, she's just trying, obviously she wants to protect Tommy and I can't remember Kyle Richardson's name, but but here now she's fighting for John. She's going to kill Michael because she is going to end this, like, whatever this family curse is, she's going to end it so that John can live. And that is, I don't want to keep comparing it to the new trilogy, but I feel like that is so much more powerful than what they did with the new trilogy in terms of like eliminating that he's her brother. So now he's just this stalker that's obsessed with her for some reason. It just doesn't, to me, have the pathos that this movie has.
No, and as much as I don't love how the reveal's handled in 2, and I love Halloween, the original Halloween 2, so much, I've never loved how they reveal that Laurie is Michael's sister, but I think it actually works throughout the rest of the series to have that connection between the two of them, and I think it really works in this movie. You're right. It's just Laurie's just kind of waiting for him to come back, and there's no reason why he would. It's just because you have a lunatic doctor going, oh, but if I put him near Laurie's house, he may go there, and then I may see how evil is created or how evil works or what is it like to be evil. Yeah, I'm still not entirely sure of Satan's motivations in that movie, but it is all about the mask in 2018.
Yeah, and there's zero question. The Mask in 2018 is 1,000 times better than H2O.
The Mask is one of my favorite masks, is one of my favorite masks of the whole series, except for the original.
Yeah, H2O's Mask, it's not as bad for me as Five's Mask, but it's a bad mask, and especially the handful of scenes when they have to, for whatever reason, they had to CGI the mask. It's not great. I will fully admit, as much as I love this movie, that the mask is stinky doo-doo. It's not a good mask.
No, I think this is one of the few Halloween movies that Michael is kind of... Actually, it's this and I would probably argue Curse, because we did talk about how Michael's kind of incidental to that movie because he's being controlled by druids. But yeah, he's kind of not the most important thing about it. Not only because you have Jamie Lee Curtis at her peak, just like kicking ass, and that's all you can really focus on. So Michael kind of is almost an afterthought. So I can kind of... Even though he's kind of important thematically, I think he's not as important as he is in, say, especially the 2018 or even like in 1998 with Halloween 4. He doesn't have that kind of presence, but you make up for it because of Laurie Stroud and Jamie Lee Curtis's performance in that. But yeah, he's kind of in the background for a lot of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, because, well, kind of two things. One, you're also introducing all the Dawson's Creek era kids.
Yes.
Era.
Yeah.
You're introducing Josh Hartnett, Michelle Williams, Jodie Lynn O'Keefe, Adam Hand-Bird. You got to establish them, but also, yeah, this one definitely, I will say, traffics in much more nostalgia than the new trilogy does. This one, as a self-contained movie, I do think, if I'm being realistic, is pretty completely ineffective. You really have to have watched Halloween and Halloween 2 in order for this movie, because it is relying so heavily on those for its emotional heft, because Michael's not that threatening in this one. And like you said, he's a little bit of an afterthought in this one. So if you don't already have built up this idea that Michael is this terrifying thing, this movie ain't going to make him scary for you. Whereas I do think legitimately 2018 makes him independently scary of, even if you haven't seen the original Halloween, 2018 makes him independently scary. That is one thing that movie does really well.
Yeah, I couldn't help comparing. There's a moment when I think he's in the kitchen. I think he's hunting one of the girls, tracked with the whole dumbwaiter scene, which I do really, really love. I like how that whole thing is shot. But he kind of adjusts the knife in his hand, but it's not that fluid. In comparing it back to 2018, when he's walking down the street, you've got John Carpenter's score, and he just flicks the knife into a different direction in his hand. I'm like, okay, there he is. There's Michael Myers. That's who he is. He's on the prowl. You've got the music, and he's terrifying. Especially in that scene when he's just going around randomly killing people. But in this one, it was just it just wasn't as fluid. And I think, because Michael's the afterthought. The only time I did find him terrifying was in that bathroom scene.
Yeah, that bathroom scene, and actually that bathroom scene, I think, is better than the one that's in 2018 because he leaves. He doesn't actually kill anybody. So it's actually a bit of a better, because again, the whole point of Michael in the original Halloween is he's not an indiscriminate killer. He's a predator.
Yes.
Everybody that he kills is getting him closer to Laurie, his ultimate target. And so this one makes sense. He has no reason to kill those people in the bathroom. He just wants to steal their car so that he can get closer to Laurie. So I actually think, yeah, that's a much more effective scene than the one we get in 2018 where he's dropping the teeth on the floor and stuff. Again, I don't want to just turn this into comparing it, but you can't not, right? I mean, they literally remade Halloween H20, so you kind of have to compare them.
They kind of did. And I think that bathroom is terrifying because you're so on, I can't remember who the actor is, but you're so on this mother character whose daughter is in the next stall and she knows someone is in there. And then when they just grab the bag and all she can do is just like, I can't go out there to protect my child. I'm kind of stuck in here and I don't know what to do. It's this kind of moment of, do I go out there and protect my child or do I stay in here? Which you can see kind of the dilemma on her face. And that is much more terrifying. I mean, look, I love a good teeth drop as much as the next person, but I think in terms of actual suspense, that is a really, really great scene. And you only see a flash of Michael. And I think that's kind of, again, going back to the original, a really effective one, like when he's you see him by the hedge, or you see him but with the sheets of the laundry in the backyard. I think that's when Michael's at his scariest, when you don't know if you saw him. Like, wait, was that him or was that someone else?
Well, and you actually see him, he actually stops and looks back at them.
Yeah.
You actually know that he knows they were there and he is choosing not to kill them. And that to me is almost creepier, right? Like it's, because again, to me, Michael is more interesting if he's a hunter, if he is actually a thinking hunter.
Yeah.
Not just Jason, who's just kind of a mindless killing machine, right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, and so this works. The other scene that I think where he's great, even though the CGI, because it's the fucking CGI mask scene, but I still think it works, is when Laurie rescues John and what's Michelle Williams? Molly.
Yeah, Molly, yeah.
Closes the door and they do Michael and Laurie do the eyes, they stare into each other's eyes.
Yeah.
Like, I wish the mask didn't suck so much, but I still think that scene works terrific.
I love that scene, but yeah, the mask is terrible. It's like, it's because it is them finally seeing each other. It's like Laurie's actually finally realizing, oh wait, he's here. Before it's this kind of, oh, I don't know if my son's in danger. Am I being over paranoid? Because it's Halloween and that kind of, oh no, she's got it clicking on because I've been talking about the sort of the sacrificial nature to Michael Myers quite a bit through this series, and I think there is an element of that because they make a point of saying that John is 17, and then when Laurie goes, how old are you? I was 17. She looks at the birthday card and she goes, oh shit, this is when it happens, and she's right. There's a weird sacrificial, I must go and kill the 17-year-old kind of thing to Michael. There's always has been. It's not about if they're having sex. It's not about if they're falling or doing something they're not meant to. It's just because they are primed for adulthood. I don't know kind of exactly what it is, but yeah, that I love that moment so much when she goes, okay, yeah, something's up, and yeah, now he's not in Yellowstone like he said he was. Oh no, things are gonna happen.
Yeah, no, and just again, Jamie Lee Curtis. It's funny. She's backtracked so much, and I don't begrudge actors. When you're doing a new movie, you got part of the job is you kind of talk shit on the old movie. I mean, that just is part of the PR, because she's been talking shit on this one, but. I'm sorry, she is so fucking good in this. When she closes that door and they stare into each other's eyes, she sells that scene so goddamn well in terms of, like you said, one, absolute fear, but then again, also like almost relief again, because I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. Like Michael, my brother, my crazy boogeyman fucking brother is here, and God damn it, bitches, it's on now, and I love that so much.
And it helps that Steve Miner is a better director than David Gordon Green. Yes, we are comparing this to 2018 a lot, but I think it's a remake of this movie, as Mike has said. You have to. But Steve Miner is he's a great, solid, goddamn director. He's every movie that, we're not going to talk about Soul Man. We'll just forget that Soul Man exists. But usually every single one of his movies is really solid. It's great. Lake Placid is such a great friggin' romantic comedy friggin' monster movie that it is absolutely great. Again, another 90s movie where you just have the best cast in the world. Bill Pullman and Bridget Fonda just flirting with each other. I'm just like, I could just watch this for like 5 more hours. And even his 2 Friday the 13th movies, which I love how this movie keeps nodding to Friday the 13th. When you meet Jason Gordon-Levitt and he's wearing the hockey mask, and the whole thing about John is having to go camping, I'm just like, yeah, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing, Kevin. I see what you're doing.
Well, to shout out, because Patrick and Matt Bledsoe from Film Geeks, they did that episode on That Guy Directors, and I can't remember if Steve Miner was one of them, but Miner is absolutely a That Guy director, right? He's a very competent, exceptionally competent journeyman filmmaker, and David Gordon Green is an auteur. And that's fine, except for the fact that, when it comes to creating these kind of schlocky, schlockanaw movies, give me Steve Miner any day of the week, because he knows how to make the scenes that need to hit.
Yes.
And he does that perfectly in this.
Yeah, this is a guy who looks at his shooting days and goes, okay, these are the ones I really need to focus on. I need to focus on the dumbwaiter murder. I need to focus on Laurie destroying the thing on the gate. I need to focus on that scene in the doorway when they're just looking at each other. There are all these kind of things that but then he'll know to kind of go delicate, like when that scene where she's her boyfriend Adam Arkin has gone to the bathroom where he's not there, and she's just like twisting the glass, like she won't drink in front of him, and she's just twisting the wine glass, and then just this kind of nervous energy, and then when she goes, I'll have another glass of Chardonnay, and the waiter looks at it and goes like, another glass of Chardonnay, and she just sculls it. It's like it's this amazing delicate moment that you didn't. I can imagine another filmmaker and a certain producer saying, cut it, but they didn't. And he was like, this is something we need. If we're going to establish Laurie's state of mind, this is the perfect way to do it, because she has to have a front of being the great principal, the kind of onto it, knows what's going on, having a whole bunch of things. And when you really see her, it's when she's drinking or when she's with her boyfriend or when she's with John. That's the time you really see who Laurie is. Every other time she's got this facade up, and I love the scene with the wine glass. It's so good.
Yeah, no, it is. Again, this is kind of, because I know this isn't beloved by a lot of Halloween fans, and I hadn't watched this for probably about 10 years, I would say. And as the new series started coming out, I was like, well, am I the wrong one? Is H20 not as good as I remember? And then when we watched it a few days ago, I was like, no, this movie, I think at least, is fucking terrific. And there are so many things going on in the margins here that are so well thought out and so planned out that you can only get when you have a script by Kevin Williamson and a director like Steve Miner and an actress like Jamie Lee Curtis doing. That I just think it's 86 minutes. It's got that Dimension look. But I think it's so much better than it actually gets credit for. And I really do hope maybe we, talking about this and me being overly enthusiastic about it, encourage some people to revisit it, because I do really think there's a lot going on in this movie that is so much better than people give it credit for. No,
it's kind of like a Universal monster movie in a way, that it's short, but it packs so much in and you don't feel like you're losing anything. And I don't. I think it's got just enough of character development and action. I mean, you do have a long moment, except from the beginning when you get poor Joseph Gordon-Levitt with a skate in his face, which seems so... I don't know why that's so brutal to me. It's
really gnarly, right? It's such a gnarly... Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's just Michael just looked at this kid and went, fuck you, and just went skate in the face. And again, chose this predator side. Like, he is going into that nurse's house to find information on Laurie. That is why he is there. But it is, and then you have this long stretch of just nothing. Well, not nothing. You don't have a lot of kills until the kid's in the kitchen. That is kind of when it really kind of kicks off. I mean, this movie doesn't have a huge body count. And I know at the time it got dissed because it was just, they turned Halloween into Scream. Which I don't think is completely fair, because as again, tracking this series, it's amazing how Scream pops up even from the first movie. because you do have Wes Craven kind of homaging Carpenter in a way in that first movie. Like, he's not only the fact that they show Halloween, they're watching Halloween in the movie, but I've got the feeling that Wes Craven was like going, no, I'm going to honor my friend. Like, he made an amazing movie. This is kind of riffing on the Halloween idea a little bit. Let's go with it, and I'm just going to do all my amazing action. God, if Wes Craven had ever directed an action movie, it would have been amazing.
I mean, the closest we got, Red Eye is pretty close. And
Red
it's
Eye.
fucking incredible. You know, I mean, it's absolutely fucking incredible. So, yeah, if he had done a full-blown action movie, oh my God.
That man, you had a pacing and do action and ramping up like no one's business. I mean, yeah.
The end of both Nightmare and Nightmare 3 are as good as any action movies you'll ever watch in terms of action. You know, like Nancy just kicking the shit out of Freddy throughout her entire house is as good as any action scene you'll ever see.
It's so good. And the fact that Scream keeps sort of coming up has been brought up multiple times, even before we get to Halloween H20, I think is really interesting because I think they do mirror each other in a lot of ways. Like when I saw Bodies, I was like, oh, this is the kind of the continuation of that even, but it's just with more Gen Z, I guess you could call them, like really kids who are talking in a very specific heightened way. They are dealing with all the things that they think they're dealing with in the 2020s instead of like Laurie in 1978. And also Sydney in 1996, and now this movie in 1998. It's kind of like, I don't know, it reminded me a lot of that kind of, we've just evolved it to Bodies, which I like a lot, but it is seriously dumb, and I do like how dumb it is. But it is, and it keeps coming up. So when people sort of say, oh, they turned Halloween into Scream, I'm like, yeah, but Scream was always kind of riffing on Halloween to begin with, so this is just the natural kind of progression, and you do get those Kevin Williamson's kind of take on what those two things are. And no, it is great. I mean, that first scene when they're in the kitchen and John is just giving Laurie shit, like, because he's having to wake her up again after having a nightmare. He's having to deal with his mother, and he's sick of being the secret parent. And I love the thing of, like, you know, you're stifling a 17-year-old's ability to grow up. I can't remember the exact line, but it's the most Kevin Williamson line I've ever heard. And yeah, it plays on those tropes so well. So yeah, no, it directly is after Scream, but those two series are related. That's my argument.
I mean, I think they're inseparable, to be honest.
Yeah,
you know, they just naturally continue to build on one another, and yeah, that's one of the other things I love about it is well, as we know, because she was in Dawson's Creek, but I think in Michelle Williams and Josh Hartnett, they also found like perfect, you know, as good as the cast in Scream, perfect vehicles to deliver Kevin Williamson's dialogue. I mean, I know people like to, I don't think it's as much now, but I know there was a long time where people really like to shit on Josh Hartnett, which, you know, as a longtime Keanu Reeves defender, I've also long been a big Josh Hartnett defender, and I'm kind of happy to see that he's coming, you know, people are coming around on him like they have Keanu too, because yes, both actors have what I would consider to be fairly limited ranges, but within that range, they're fucking terrific. And he is so good in this. And he and Michelle Williams are so adorable together in this that it's perfect casting as far as they go.
They really are. Well, to be fair with Josh Hartnett, Wrath of Man did come out last year and reminded everyone that he's actually kind of he's just a ball of charisma. Bad hair or good hair. No.
Boy Sweat Dave. I was so happy when he showed up in Wrath of Man and they fucking called him Boy Sweat Dave. I was like, oh my God, this is perfect for him. You know, and not to derail us a little bit, but part of Hartnett's issue with his career is he's never wanted to be a star. He's like actively avoided and put off, kind of like Keanu has.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah, just actively, you know, he lives in London now. For the longest time, he refused to move to Hollywood. I think he's from either Michigan or Wisconsin, and he went back there. He wouldn't move to Hollywood. And so, you know, I think that's part of it too, is he's just not interested in being a star, but dude does some really interesting stuff. And yeah, Wrath of Man, he's so fucking, he's so great in that.
No, but I generally like the kids in this movie. Michelle Williams, even from the beginning, I think she's always radiated just this amazing, you're someone to watch. Like, I loved watching her career. I'm like, wow, the girl from Dawson's Creek is actually interesting, choosing interesting things to do. She kind of refused herself to get typecast as the bad girl that she played, or the bad girl wanting to be good, I think is probably the best way of describing her character on Dawson's Creek from memory.
No, that's a perfect way to describe her.
Yeah, and then I'm like, oh, I don't usually see my teen actors go on and to get Academy Award nominations and to do some, like, amazing, just continue just to go, no. Again, another one who could have wanted to be a movie star, but then decided she wanted to be a character actor, I think is fascinating. Josh Hartnett is great. I love those two together because they're just adorable together. And I like how the four of them in that one scene just decide they don't want to go camping. Like, Michelle, there's a scholarship kid, so therefore something happened with the bill and she can't go. John's mother doesn't want him to go, and Jodie Lynn O'Keefe playing, I think, Sarah, just thinks camping is lame. So then her boyfriend is like, fine, we'll just hang out at the school when no one's around. And I do love that scene, how it happens. It's just these, oh God, my mother's being a pain too. Why do we want to go camping anyway? And then Michelle is like, well, I can't go. So, and then he's like, well, I'm staying. It's just feels very natural for what teenagers actually do and decide in the moment. Like, you don't make good choices when you're a teenager because everything's in the moment.
Absolutely. Well, and I also loved, I was reading some of the behind the scenes stuff, and I loved that in the initial sort of drafts, Jodie Lynn O'Keefe's character was supposed to be kind of the cliched, stuck up bitch. Mm-hmm. Basically the character that she played a couple of years later, and she's all that. Because, I mean, Jodie Lynn O'Keefe does have that look, right?
She does.
And they decided they didn't want to do that. They wanted to make her just one of this, like, a legitimate, like, member of this group of friends. I think that was a really smart decision because it's kind of the same thing they did in Scream with Rose McGowan's character, who in a lesser movie would have been sort of the stuck-up bitch, you know, because the way she dresses and the way she looks. And it's, you know, and you get that situation where you're like, well, why are Sydney and her even friends? But what I love about the four kids in this movie is you totally buy, why are they friends? They're in this elite private school together, but they're all kind of in sort of various ways weirdly outcasts, even though they're clearly popular, but they're still like, they're not of everybody else. And so of course it makes sense they would bond together and be together. Yeah,
I mean, John is the principal's kid, Michelle is the scholarship kid, and the other two kind of fit around in that same kind of mode. So yeah, they're clearly popular, they're very beautiful, so everyone's obviously going, yes. But they kind of they're the ones that kind of keep to themselves a little bit more. So when John finds out everyone wants to stay, he's like, well, guess I'm staying. This is actually going to work out for me. So when Jamie Lee Curtis goes, you can go camping, the look in his face is just like, oh, and I can't tell her that I don't want to go because we had this huge fight this morning about it. Multiple fights about it during the day. And now she's giving me what I wanted when I didn't want to. It's like that great parents-kid moment of like...
No, absolutely. Yeah,
I'm relenting and giving you what you want and giving you freedom. And he's like going, oh, that's not the freedom I wanted. I want something else now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. It's one of the ways in which, and this is just, I think what Williamson at his best is so good at, is he's a very efficient writer, but B also is very good at coloring in the margins and really making. He's in a lot of ways. He reminds me a lot of Aaron Sorkin before Aaron Sorkin went off a fucking cliff and just the worst writer ever made, right?
How did that happen? Oh no, I know how it happened, but it's just kind of like you were amazing and now you're just tiring. I don't understand what happened.
Yeah, and I feel like Williamson hasn't quite hit that yet. You know, he's had some misses. I mean, I still stand by that. I think Teaching Mrs. Tingle is one of the most unwatchable movies that I've ever seen in my life. But like, he's so good at saying so much with so little. You know, people always say he's very chatty and his characters are very verbose, but even with that, he's saying so much more than what they're saying, and I love that.
No, it's kind of weird when you look back and you realize that Kevin Williamson is such a formative force in how I take in popular culture. Yes, I've always talked about Scream was the first big horror movie that I absolutely adored. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the whole series. And so I guess that. But then when I sort of look at things, the books I read and kind of things like, I like a verbose prose. I like when they're trying to speak bigger than they are and yet kind of can say so much within the... within that. So I'm just gonna, don't mean to shit on Amsterdam, but I feel like it's a movie that can take a bit of shit. That dialogue in that movie is atrocious because it's trying to do the same thing. These characters are trying to be verbose and speaking kind of a form of meta that's meant to be beautiful, but it's so bad that they're rhyming at times. I'm like, no, that's not how you do it. That is, you're just bluntly saying everything that's in there. You're not talking in these metaphors or these kind of coloring in the lines or just adding color to the dialogue. You're just doing it wrong. And Kevin Williamson can just go in there, and because he's known as the Scream guy, I think he gets caught in a little bit of, oh, you just do teenagers. I'm like, yeah, but Dawson's Creek was actually really good for a while. I mean, yeah, it was all very much about everyone falling in and out of love and Dawson being weirdly obsessed with Steven Spielberg, but it was it did so much for the teen genre. It changed the teen genre. I mean, he's kind of like a John Hughes in a way, but with more stabbing.
No, it really was for people who like witty, clever dialogue. I mean, you basically say 1996 to 2000. You were feasting because you had Kevin Williamson, you had Aaron Sorkin, and you had Joss Whedon.
Yeah.
And all of those, they all have flaws, and Whedon's a goddamn monster and Sorkin's an asshole. Williamson actually seems to be pretty cool and chill, but you were just feasting. I mean, these three guys were so fucking good at what they did. If you liked that kind of dialogue, if you liked that kind of character and banter, you were just fucking, to me, you were back in the like 19, this is going to make a ton of sense to you because you know how much I love people like Frank Capra and Howard Hawks.
Oh yeah.
You were like back in the late 30s, right? You were just feasting on these TV shows and movies that had all this rapid fire Hawksian Capra-esque banter. And then like all things, it got overdone and it got copied and it died. But then at least one of those people turned out to be a goddamn reprehensible human being. But at the time, I mean, it was glorious, Linz. I was living large.
Oh, so was I. And I didn't realize how good I had it. Yes, one of those guys is Airhammer's a monster, but, those shows that he started were amazing. And I still love some of those early movies that he wrote. So I'm just like, oh my God, give me that dialogue. But yeah, it was just quick banter. Everyone was intelligent. Everyone was cool. You wanted to be those people. And that's like when you go watch a Capra or a screwball comedy, which is where I was trying to find the word when I was talking about Lake Pleasance. It's kind of people that you want to be that intelligent. You want to be that cool. You want to be that involved. You want to be that. And as I said, yeah, we tried to talk like that in the 90s, which is why it all fell off a cliff, because everyone thought, oh, I can do that. No, we never talked like that. We never.
None of us. No, we couldn't.
We tried. Like, oh my God, you believe how when I was a teenager trying to get drunk, trying to talk in metaphors, it never turned out well.
Nope, never at all. No, exact same thing. The best I could do was I would just actually internalize lines and hope to God when I repeated them that people hadn't seen the show. I mean, speaking of Sports Night, I still say so many lines from Sports Night. And it's great because nobody now remembers Sports Night. So
they don't.
I can get away with it, and people think I'm fucking brilliant, but I'm totally not, because when I tried to do it myself, I had fucking nothing, man.
I still remember a friend, I said, oh, I love West Wing, and she's like, oh, you need to see Sports Night. Sat down, we watched those 2 seasons. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know this could exist. It was just,
one of my favorites is still, if I end up in a conversation that's just not going great, I will throw out Josh Charles' line, the length of this conversation has become disproportionate to my interest in it, and then walk away.
Oh, if you did that in a courtroom, that would be amazing. You'd get fired instantly, but it would be amazing.
I need to. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, and again, I get very nostalgic about the 90s. Yes, I know the 90s weren't perfect, and the 90s were very good at glossing over things and just ignoring the problem until hopefully it went away, which now we know it hasn't, and it's just kind of built. But the 90s was such a weird time. It was just this kind of thing of, yes, everyone was losing their mind after of Tarantino, but then we had like friggin' Buffy was a mainstream network, let's watch it every week show. You had Scream coming out. You had these movies where they were redoing monster movies for Oscars. You had an early part of the period when studio execs thought, because Batman was a hit in '89, that they needed to make 1930s comic strips into movies. It was such a weird time. It was, some of the best movies came out of the 90s. Some of the worst movies came out of the 90s. But it was a time when everything was throwing things at the wall. I mean, yes, this is the rise of Miramax and Dimension, and we also know monsters. Even they would chop a movie into shreds. Like, I can imagine them going, no, we need to make it more like Scream. This is why you need to get Kevin Williamson in. This is what we're going to do. And no one had a choice on it whatsoever. Except I know Jamie Lee Curtis was like, no, please get Kevin Williamson in to punch up the script. We need it. But yeah, it's just... Yeah, I'm getting very nostalgic because I'm like,
no, you hit the nail right on the head. It was very much a period of let's throw a bunch of shit on the wall and see what sticks. And right now, and I'm not trying to be old man yelling at clouds.
Oh, I am.
but there is definitely a part now where so much of, especially movies that make it in the theaters, feel so prepared, so like just perfectly meticulously dialed in to what's going to hit a 4-quadrant blockbuster and stuff like that. And in the 90s, there was so much more shit that was just, let's just fuck it. Let's just throw it on the wall and see what fits. Scream was a hit. Let's throw out a bunch of fucking Scream knockoffs. And you know what? Some, like I Know What You Did Last Summer, will be big hits. And some, like Urban Legends, won't, because I know people love Urban Legends now, but it was not a big hit when it came out, and some like H2O. H2O was actually a pretty big hit, but Lake Placid was a bomb, and so you just throw all the shit on the wall and see what sticks. And if enough of it sticks, you can justify the other ones the bomb. Whereas now it feels like every movie has to be a fucking hit because they spend so goddamn much money on them that if one fails, it just wipes out an entire slate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Morbius almost killed the vampire movie. That we were meant to get a vampire renaissance. I was like, yes, give me more vampire movies. I love it. Morbius comes out. It makes no money twice and becomes a kind of a joke. And now they're like, yeah, we're not going to make vampire movies. I'm like, but just because the DC movie about vampires didn't work, why are you taking away my Kara Kusama Dracula movie? I don't understand. It's constantly that. Movies didn't cost as much, so God, he's a monster, and I don't want to say his name. And he was very polished. He probably started the cycle of, I'm going to package a movie directly for this quadrant, and he had an instinct of knowing what was going to win, what to put in it, who to bribe and who to blackmail to get, maybe not that. Anyway, he knew kind of what movies were going to fit in which squares. He had a knack for that. Yeah, the one who should not be named.
Yeah, those brothers knew what they were doing. Say what you will about them, and there are horrible, horrible things you can say about them. They fucking knew what they were doing. And there's just no way around that. I'm not defending them. I'm not justifying it. But they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, which is why they could get away with stuff for so long. They could just treat people like shit. One of them could just go out and just abuse people as much as they wanted because they knew how to manipulate everything, and they knew what worked. They knew what was going to work, and it made the 90s glorious at the time. And then when you look back, you're like, oh, there was some stuff going on, wasn't there? Yikes. But that was just one of the things that happened. It's like, we talk about Joss Whedon being a monster. He was really good at what he did. I'm not defending him. I'm not defending how he treated anyone on his sets, especially... I mean, I know he actually threw people against wall. Well, even a guy who played Spike says, yeah, he threw me against a wall once because he didn't like me. I'm like, yikes. That is like probably one of the least things he did. No. I mean, and that's the thing, we talk about this all the time. Like any of us who are even tangentially related to the entertainment industry, whether it's
actually being in it or being like a critic or someone who writes about it, or even just people like us who are fans who podcast about it. We all have blood on our hands, right? Like we have all defended and supported monsters. That's just part of the deal. But at the end of the day, these movies are made by hundreds of people.
Yes.
And Halloween H20 to me is a movie that was made by hundreds of people. Harvey Weinstein was not the only person making that movie, and it's a good fucking movie.
It is. I'm not trying to take anything away from H20 because I think it's an amazing movie, and a lot of people from the grip to the script editor to everyone else plays is just as much as an important role as Jamie Lee Curtis kicking so much ass in that movie. It is but I just find the 90s looking back so much more interesting than I think I actually realized at the time. That's kind of what I was thinking of. It's just like, I was a kid, so I was not even paying attention to any of that. I was just like, I like this movie. I want to see more of this. You're going to give me more? Bring it on. I get to watch Buffy. I get to watch West Wing. I will eventually discover Sports Night a few years later. I get to watch Halloween H20. It was just a treasure trove of things I loved, and I wanted more and more of it, and I did until everyone tried to copy it and it didn't go well.
Yeah, no, I mean that's exactly the perfect way. That's almost like a perfect way to kind of wrap this up, because I feel like this was sort of, H20 and maybe more the Faculty kind of signaled the end of this sort of wave, because after them the movies just got fucking worse and worse, and that type of dialogue and that type of writing just got fucking worse and worse until it eventually got buried, basically, because everybody who wasn't one of those three absolutely brilliant writers thought they could do it, and they fucking couldn't.
No, and that's what happens. I mean, this ending has a perfect ending. I always think that he's going for another attack on her before she swings the axe. It's a perfect way to end the movie, but but he's just reaching out, and then you see something change in his eyes, and you're like, oh no, I
love it. I actually tweeted this. I love it because if you listen to the opening title sequence, it plays Loomis's voiceover.
Yes,
where he says, "I looked into his eyes, the devil's eyes." And so then you get that end, and he's like reaching out, and Laurie looks into his eyes, and then just fucking, I don't know if you've ever played God of War, but just fucking Kratos's his head right off. Like, I don't even know how do you even come back from an ending like that? Like, that is such a perfect, amazing way for that movie to end. And I know we don't even need to talk about Resurrection. I know you've got another episode on that, but just the idea of, but that is a perfect part of the conversation of why Dimension sucks.
Yes.
Because they had a perfect ending, just an amazing fucking ending to the Halloween franchise, and they went and went, well, we can make more money, so let's make Resurrection.
They could never leave it alone. As much as I love Scream 3, that was them going, we can make more money off this. Saying, off the Scream franchise, even though I do love Scream 3 now, but at the time I was like, oh, why did you go back? It's just, Scream keeps coming back. No, it is, but it is such a perfect ending, and it is that Dimension thing of just never being able to leave well enough alone.
And we're definitely gonna get into that when we get to The Crow, because I mean, oh my God, they milked that lifeless corpse for everything that they had.
Yeah, when they should have left it well alone.
Yeah. I mean, of all the things that they should have fucking left well enough alone, that was absolutely the one. So,
yeah. Yep. And with that, we might as well get into, the main event. This is a seminal movie for a lot of people, which, of course, is The Crow. And as I imagine the curtains are opening back up, what is going to be your first trailer for The Crow?
So, you've been doing this show for a while now, and I've been guesting for a while, so I've now hit the point where I can't remember all the trailers I've recommended before, but I don't think I've recommended this one. So I want some people who are maybe only familiar with The Crow to see what my boy Brandon was capable of when he's not being gothed out and mopey. So my first trailer is going to be Showdown in Little Tokyo.
For over 400 years, they've had a strict code of honor and unparalleled standards of respect. For over 400 years, they have terrorized the streets of Japan. Now, they want to control the city of Los Angeles. Determined to leave their mark in blood. Dolph Lundgren and Brandon Lee are ready for a showdown in Little Tokyo. They're two LA cops who are hungry for a little takeout. Dolph Lundgren, Brandon Lee.
I love this movie so much.
It's so good. It's so good. And again, we talked about the efficiency of H20. This is 79 minutes long, and it is filled with more awesomeness than you can possibly comprehend if you haven't seen it yet.
As well as the line that is the biggest dick I've ever seen. Or I can't remember the exact line, but Brandon telling Dolph.
Telling Dolph Lundgren, Kenner, in case we die tonight, I saw you getting out of the hot tub, and I just want you to know you have the biggest dick I've ever seen on a man.
It is extraordinary. No, if you want to see what kind of... Yeah, because he is being very mopey goth boy in this, with only a very few moments of him smiling. But if you want to see a Brandon Lee nonstop smiling and just actually showing what he can do, then this is the movie to do it. It is... Oh, there should have been like sequels and sequels of him and Dolph.
Well, and I was going to recommend Rapid Fire, but I have it in my head. I swear I've picked Rapid Fire before on this show. But either way, both trailers would be perfect. Both movies are great. Both movies highlight, something that obviously we're going to talk about a lot. What just a goddamn tragedy it was that we lost Brandon Lee. He should have had Keanu Reeves. I mean, they could have existed together, but he should have had a Keanu Reeves-like career. He could have done romantic comedies. He could have done dramas. He could have been just this amazing, charismatic, charming, lovable actor. And we lost him way too soon. And so I want people, because The Crow is obviously very sad, very depressing. It is as awesome as it is. You're going to end the night on a bit of a down note. And so I wanted to lift people up before we kind of took him down. No, because of The Crow, he's preserved in amber as The Crow, which I think is beautiful and depressing as all hell. Because you're right, he should have had the Keanu Reeves career, which I think, I don't think he should have taken over what there wouldn't have been Keanu, but I think this is a guy who could have been who was a leading man. He was going to do everything. And he was going to be a guy who should have had multiple comebacks, like Keanu. Just then we thought, we're sick of Brandon. Oh, wait, there he is again doing something amazing. And it sucks that we never got that. But no, God, he's so charming in this. He has the best smile. He's so well, and I just love, for people who don't know, the plot is basically that Dolph Lundgren plays. They both play these cops who are, it's a buddy cop comedy. Yeah. Mismatched cops, but Dolph Lundgren is this lumbering Scandinavian white guy who grew up in Japan, so he's all into like Bushido and the Code of the Samurai and karate and all of that. Yes. Brandon is this kid who grew up in the valley and really only knows martial arts because his mom thought it would help him out in his dance classes. And so the way it plays on like your stereotypes and your expectations, I remember all the controversy when the god-awful MCU Iron Fist started. And people were like, why, Iron Fist has to be white. And I'm like, motherfuckers, watch Showdown in Little Tokyo. You can 100% cast an Asian person in this role and still make them the outsider that Danny Rand needs to be, because that's exactly what Brandon is in this movie. He is an Asian American who has no touch with his heritage, no touch with his history. And I think that's such a fascinating for a movie that has no business being as deep as it is. For a movie where Brandon says, can we agree when we're done with this, we are going to go back and eat sushi off those naked chicks? It has no business being as clever as it is with those stereotypes.
Absolutely not, because when you first see this movie and then you realize that Dolph Lundgren, who was a 6 foot, I always imagine him as 6'5". He may not be that tall, but as this kind of hulking god, Norse god, being, oh, I know Japanese. I'm like going, oh no. And then you watch how they're playing with those stereotypes and you're like, oh, this is actually really clever. This movie should not be this clever.
No business being as clever as it is. And
yeah,
it's 79 minutes.
Again, efficient and done and does not miss anything out. This is actually directed by Dwight H. Little, if I remember correctly. Am I remembering the wrong director?
No, it's directed by, I believe it's, let me look it up, but I believe it's Mark L. Lester. But
Lester. Sorry. Yes, I knew it was a That Guy director.
It is definitely a That Guy director. Famous director of Class of 1984, Class of 1989. But let me just verify that before people light us up on Twitter.
Yes.
Mark L. Lester.
So,
Yep. So.
Yeah. Perfect.
Rapid Fire is directed by Dwight H. Little. So that's probably where you got tripped up.
That's where I got confused. I knew it was, he was working with some really great journeyman directors and was about to make, anyway, we'll get into the tragedy, I guess, soon. For my first trailer, I might as well continue on with my theme, because watching it this time around, I was struck about how, well, not just how goth The Crow is, which it is so goth. It is also gothic. It is also grim fairy tale. I'm surprised the Visigoths didn't show up in this thing. So my first trailer, I am going to go for another 90s monster movie, but I'm going for Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992.
Their names are legendary. Their destinies linked. An ageless myth meets an uncompromising master. Francis Ford Coppola brings an undying legend to life. Dracula.
The one that started it all, one of my favorite vampire movies of all time. I still remember somehow going to see this at the theater when I should not have been gone to see this in a movie theater. It's a goddamn amazing movie, man. It's Coppola.
So I haven't seen this since 92. And I see people online, friends of ours like Brandon Streisnig and Rob Hunter and people like that singing its praises. And I got to be honest, I fucking hated this thing in 1992. So I think I need to revisit it, because this is one of those movies where I am in the category of because this is a thing that happens on Twitter where people reevaluate movies no matter how bad they are, right? And then every once in a while somebody will be like, not every bad movie needs to be reevaluated. This is one where I'm kind of in that category, but I definitely need to revisit it. It is gorgeous. It is beautiful. There's no question about that. Gary Oldman is terrific. It's just all I can think of is my boy's accent, my boy's Keanu's terrible accent, and my other boy, Bill Campbell, the Rocketeer, being absolutely staggeringly terrible in it as well. So I will say it is an uneven movie for all the beautifulness of this movie. I mean, they were using silent movie techniques. The thing looks gorgeous. It is almost too gothic. When you're looking at this thing, you're like, you can tone it down, Francis. You don't need to make it this intense. Yeah, the way I would describe it is production design the movie.
It is. And because of that, some of the performances are a little, shall we say, off kilter. I would say Anthony Hopkins' Van Helsing is a little, he looked what everyone else was doing and decided, fuck it, I'm going over the top. I think Keanu Reeves he was probably tired and put into a situation with all these very well-trained classical actors. and maybe was losing his footing. Same with Billy Campbell. I think a little bit they were just kind of, well, I don't know where to find my footing a little bit with this. They got lost in it a little bit, and then Coppola just didn't tell Keanu not to do the accent. Yeah, maybe Winona Ryder a little bit. I think she's better. I think she's a little bit more of a stronger footing. Because I think she would realize by 1992, I'm goddamn Winona Ryder. But yeah, I think there are a few performances that do get lost in it, and then some who shine. I mean, this is the Gary Oldman show. I mean, he is just the whole thing. He knows it. I got the biggest Gary Oldman crush from watching this movie, which went back in 92, which I don't think was the point. But me being 12 going on 13, I was like, hello, Mr. Oldman, who are you? And it kind of blew me away. But yeah, this movie got made fun of for certain performances. I don't think it's completely deserved, but you can kind of tell that Keanu's like going, oh no, I'm in a movie with Gary Oldman, Anthony Hopkins, and Tom Waits, and a whole bunch of other people who are interesting, and it's like, go back to Bond, Denise Richards. She's not terrible in it, but she's in scenes with Robbie Coltrane, Pierce Brosnan, Judi, I think she's not with Judi Dench, but she's in these movies with these very British classically trained actors.
Robert Carlyle, Sophie Marceau, she's in scenes with them. Like, she's just not, and as people listening know from our Wild Things episode, I am pro Denise Richards. Oh, but that's a perfect analogy. Keanu in this is Denise Richards in The World Is Not Enough.
Exactly. And I think it was a little unfair to him, but at the time, 92, I think if you're going to put very beautiful people in your Dracula movie to try and get the kids to see it, Keanu's not a bad way to go. So, yeah, it is still flawed, but I think I'm a sucker for set design, so if you're going to give me set design the movie, I'm going to be pretty happy with it, and oh my god, it's set design the movie.
Well, and again, that's one of those things, like we kind of talked about a little bit when we were talking about Halloween of the 90s. I feel like in 1992, Bram Stoker's Dracula, I was kind of like, whatever, it's pretty, it's fine. But now I feel like if I watched it again, I would be like, oh my God, I feel like my eyes are being made love to, because again, movies just don't look like this anymore. So I definitely need to revisit it. I make no promises that I'm going to like it, but I definitely promise I will revisit it because I think I need to, because I think I'll have a better appreciation of what we don't get in movies anymore. I mean, Bram Stoker's Dracula was a major box office bomb. This was a disaster for Coppola.
Yeah. I mean, I think he put his own money into it or something.
Yeah.
Like he constantly is putting his own money into movies. But yeah, this was a bomb, and everyone just focused in on that Keanu thing. But I think it's a movie that has aged better with literally age, because you're looking at this going, oh, movies don't look like this anymore. I mean, this looks 3D and it's not 3D. Like, there's so much texture to it. So I think it's a definite movie that you look back and go, oh, we still could be getting this, but we're not, because even now people don't trust Coppola with money. You don't
trust Coppola with money, and we'd rather film shit in parking lots than, actually build sets and stuff like that.
Exactly. I mean, when Coppola's going to build something in a parking lot, which he did for the few movies, they were insane expensive sets. So,
exactly.
Yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, I'm still looking forward to Metropolis. I think it's Megatropolis. Anyway, that movie he's sold his winery for. Let's do this. But yeah, no, it is still a fascinating movie, and I think if you're going to go over gothic, that's kind of a good way to get into The Crow. What is going to be your second trailer?
Well, speaking of, let's keep the theme going, because the other trailer that I immediately came up with is a few years later, also a movie that could be called Production Design the Movie, Alex Proyas' Dark City.
First, there was darkness. Then came the strangers.
Sleep.
Seeking a cure for their own mortality.
To steal our thoughts.
Our souls makes us different from them.
To shape our memories.
We have much to do.
To take away all that makes us human.
It is time.
Who are they? But one of us knows their secret.
You saw something in you. I don't think the sun exists.
And one of us,
we are running out of time. There's no escape.
Has the power to stop that.
Yes. I only saw this, I think 5 years ago for the first time. For some reason, I completely missed it. And I think just the way how old I was for The Crow, it was more of a sleepover movie for me more than anything else. Oh my God, it's amazing.
It's so good. It's you know, especially if you can see the director's cut. I mean, I think the theatrical's great too. So, you know, see it however you can. But the production design, the acting, the plot, Rufus Sewell actually, you know, playing a neo-noir sci-fi fantasy hero is terrific. I will always, when it comes to Proyas movies, the Crow will always have my heart. But if I'm being truly objective, I think Dark City might actually be his best movie. It's so fucking good.
It's so inventive. It is, like, I knew that we're going to change characters every night, so I kind of knew the synopsis before I went in, but to actually see it in front of your eyes is a very different thing to actually hearing about it, which I love movies like that. If it still can take you by surprise of just how it moves, then I think you've got something there. It's not straightforward at all.
No, and what you're really not expecting when you're watching it is for it to ultimately, and this is going to sound like it's a criticism, but it's not, because I thought it was absolutely brilliant when I saw it. You're not expecting it to turn into a fucking superhero movie, but that's basically ultimately what it turns. I mean, spoilers for a 20-year-old movie, but that's basically what it turns into, is a fucking superhero movie at the end of it. And
yeah, so does The Crow in certain ways. I mean, Proyas is actually got a very good handle on what it means to have a superhero movie, I think, more than Marvel does at the moment. I'm tired.
No, I agree. You know, I agree. It's very much, you know, it reminded me a lot. The movie it reminded me a lot of was actually Dark City reminded me a lot of David Cronenberg's Scanners, which is, again, another superhero movie by somebody that you would never expect to make a superhero movie. But at the end of the day, Scanners is a fucking superhero movie. Like, I'm sorry. You can tell me it's Cronenberg and it's body horror and it's all this. It's the fucking X-Men. Right. Like, and so, but it's by somebody that you would never expect to make a superhero movie. And that's what makes it interesting. And I think Dark City is the same way. It's this, you know, ultimately this battle of like super telekinetic, super powered people that you would have. It starts as a fucking neo-noir murder mystery. And then just the ways it goes is so fascinating. I think Kiefer Sutherland is maybe missing the boat a little bit in terms of his performance, but I think William Hurt's great. Sewell and Jennifer Connelly are terrific.
Yeah.
You know, again, it's the movie that this was Proyas's kind of blank check movie that he made after The Crow. Ended up being a big bomb. And what's funny is it came out in 98, and then the next year we got The Matrix, which basically redoes almost the exact same story. Not saying that the Wachowskis ripped off Dark City. They certainly didn't. They've been working on, but for whatever reason, The Matrix became a worldwide cultural phenomenon, and Dark City was a massive bomb. Proyas has been trying to kind of catch up to that ever since. But man, if you're gonna take your blank check from The Crow and make a movie, boy, you'd be hard pressed to make a better fucking one than this one.
No, it's kind of fascinating that The Matrix hit and the Dark City didn't, and just within a year of each other. Because I had someone describe the plot of The Matrix to me before I saw it, so I already kind of knew going in, but it was still a surprise. Like, it's kind of one of those movies, if someone describes it to you, you still don't know what the hell they're talking about until you actually see it, and you're like, oh, they're in a computer. Oh, okay. Okay, now I get it. But someone explaining that to me, I'm just like, well, this was 99. The internet wasn't as it is now. Like, I think it's much easier to grasp what the Matrix is now back into 99 when someone's trying to explain. I'm like, they're what? And she kept talking about how she never looked at FPOS the same way again. I'm like, what has FPOS got to do with it? What has credit cards got to do with anything? But it is this kind of sort of amazing thing, and it's just amazing kind of how a certain energy will get an audience in, and where there's one with Dark City feels a little bit more classical in a way that is kind of with noir and then turning into a superhero movie where Matrix starts off as a superhero movie way early on in the piece. So I think that is maybe what people grabbed onto a little bit more. Yeah.
Well, I think there's two things. One, again, going back to Bram Stoker's Dracula, it's got Keanu, who, for all the criticism, was still, he was a box office draw.
Yep.
And it full blown in those trailers. I will fully admit, because the Dark City trailer, they are so hell bent on like hiding what the movie's about.
Yeah.
Where the Matrix, the kung fu and the Hong Kong style action is front and center in those trailers. And so it definitely, the marketing of the two movies is 100% in the Matrix's corner. There's no question about that.
Yeah, sometimes you do have to show things. I mean, yes. I mean, the classic example of showing too much is the Terminator 2 trailers. Like, I mean, if you didn't know that Arnold was the good guy going into that movie, it would be an amazing moment, and that's how the movie treats it. But you do have to give a little bit to show something of, I think it's a very fine line, but yeah, the Matrix shows the kung fu, it shows the amazing kind of wire work, it shows everything, and you're just like, oh, I need to see that. And then the Matrix backs it up. Like, it's not just two tricks, it's a whole philosophy of everything. Because the Wachowskis are just insane pod people who I don't know how their brains are just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lily and Lana, I'm like, holy shit. But yeah, it is. Yeah, so Dark City is an amazing way to get into, because I think what Alex Paris is really especially good in The Crow and Dark City is knowing the different types of gothic. Like, there's just not one type of gothic. He knows them all, and he uses them all to great effect. So that is a perfect trailer. My second trailer, I guess I'm taking the tone down, so I guess it's going to get you a bit sad when you go into it. But I saw this a few years ago and it blew me away, but I'm going James Wan's Death Sentence from 2007.
Get down! You can do this. Number 5.
Put that animal in jail.
I want this guy to go away for the rest of his life. I've got one eyewitness, you. We've just got your word.
I'm dismissing this case. Mr. Darley, you are released from custody.
You kidding me? Your brother, dude, he's dead. I say who lives, I say who dies.
Kevin Bacon is essentially what Death Wish was meant to be. And then you watch one of the most amazing sad action movies revenge movies you've ever seen in your life. Again, a movie that did nothing but in terms of box office. But it's coming back a little bit. People aren't talking about it enough, because once you see this movie, it is holy shit, this movie.
Yeah, I fucking love this movie. I mean, you know how much I love James Wan. And this, this is him also working with Lee Winnell. This was back before they went their separate ways. And this one's a lot. It's a lot. It's a tough movie to take, but you got my boy Kevin Bacon in the middle of it, and it is it's funny for people who don't know, the guy that wrote the Death Wish novels really hated the Death Wish movie. And this was ostensibly based on the second Death Wish novel, but they made it a standalone. But this is so much more in line with what he wanted, like his thesis, which is, it's that sort of old cliched saying, a man who seeks revenge should dig 2 graves.
Yes.
Which also gets one of my favorite Scott Adkins lines ever in Ninja 2, when Scott says, well, they're going to need to do a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this is such an unpleasant, bleak movie. And I mean that in the best possible way. It's got, as you would expect from Wan, it's got some tremendous action scenes. I mean, the whole kind of parking lot, parking lot. Yeah. Just some really great action scenes in it. And in the ending is a massive gut punch. I won't spoil it, but it's just a massive gut punch.
No, it is what kind of happens when you seek revenge. It's like, what are you willing to lose? In The Crow, I forgot his actual character's name. Brandon... Eric. That's it, Eric. Eric has nothing to lose, so he's just going to go full bore. Kevin Bacon still has a lot to lose in this movie. And the kind of obsession that he gets. But yeah, this movie it moves. The action is amazing. It is very bleak and very dark. I mean, Wan is always a master of tone. That is why I love Aquaman so much, because that movie feels all over the place, but he knows exactly what tone he needs to pick out for each moment. It will change wildly, but he understands tone so well as how to shoot action. And I mean, just watching his career from goddamn Saw, I'm just like, oh my god, you and Lee, they're my boys.
They're just the best. I mean, we were on a year and a half ago talking about Upgrade and talking, I mean, they're just the fucking best. They are some of the best writers and directors working right now. So I love that you picked this, because they're just, I mean, I will sing the praises of Juan until I'm blue in the face.
Me too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think they've got so much more to do, which I'm excited about. Like, they could do anything. It's just keep making Aquaman movies so you can make more Death Sentences and Malignants. That's all I want.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, literally, again, go back to the old school. I was Clint Eastwood. I was always Clint Eastwood's deal with Warner Brothers. One for them, one for him. He'd make a Dirty Harry movie. They'd let him make Bronco Billy. Like, go back to that. That was a good system. It was work for directors.
It keeps them interested. Just let them make the weird stuff in between the $200 million Aquaman movie that will make all the money for them. I mean, we're not going to get into Warner's at the moment, but that's what I think they should start doing again.
Yeah, no, I agree. Absolutely. I mean, again, I know Malignant was a failure, but you and I are fucking just over the moon for that movie. And that's what I want. I want a big blockbuster James Wan, and then I want a weird, just crazy, idiosyncratic James Wan.
Yes.
And alternate those, and I'll be perfectly happy until the day I die.
Me too. And Death Sentence is definitely one of his weird idiosyncratic, even though you'll need a hug after it. And speaking of a movie that fills me with so much joy and yet so much sadness that I do actually need a hug after watching this movie, and that is, of course, The Crow.
Tarina! 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 Tarina!
Devil's Night is upon us again. Throw a little party, start a bunch of fires, make a little profit.
When someone's dead, they can't come back, can they?
That's what I thought. Are you referring to anyone in particular?
My daddy used to say, every man's got a devil. You can't rest till you find him.
Winked at me before he jumped out a fourth-floor window like he had wings.
Now, this movie means a lot to you, so was it the movie that you came to first, or did you actually know about the graphic novel?
It was actually neither. It was Brandon.
Yes.
That was my entry point.
Yeah.
I saw Showdown in Little Tokyo whatever year it came out, and I was already a big Bruce Lee fan, so finding out that his kid was getting into acting, I had to see this movie, and I flipped absolute shit for him. I mean, he just immediately became my favorite actor. I'd said for a while, Brandon Lee was my Scott Adkins before Scott Adkins. I mean, he was this actor that I just literally probably would have actually dedicated my life to following his career. And very likely, had he been alive, would have been doing a podcast about his career and talking to him. That's how much. And then when Rapid Fire, I went back and watched his earlier movies. I imported a bootleg of his Hong Kong movie Legacy of Rage. I watched shitty ass Laser Mission, and then Rapid Fire came out, and it was game over after I saw Rapid Fire. I was like, I'm this dude is it. This is the actor I'm going to follow for the rest of my life. And then a year later, he died. And I will never forget the reading the USA Today, because my parents always used to get USA Today, the newspaper, and them reporting it, and just absolutely it was the first celebrity death that just devastated me. I mean, I just was destroyed. And I hadn't heard of The Crow. You know, they said he was filming this movie, The Crow, based on a graphic novel. And I was a big comic guy. The Crow was a very indie comic when it came out. It was, it was put out by a company called Kitchen Sink Press. And at this point, 92, 93, I'm, 15. So I'm not necessarily old enough to be going into like the back section of the comic book store where they have all the indie comics.
Yeah.
But as soon as he died, I immediately went and got the collected edition of the comic and just burned through it and found it so heartbreaking and unsettling. And the edition I had a whole bunch of like back matter from James O'Barr talking about how he wrote it because his wife died in an accident and he was so angry. And at this time, this was also when I was discovering bands like Joy Division, and I was already a big Nine Inch Nails fan, but I was really discovering sort of goth and industrial and the precursors of what would become emo music, which is the same music that O'Barr was listening to as he was writing it. So this comic, coupled with the fact that my favorite actor died filming this movie, just affected me in a way that I'm not sure anything I've ever read has. It just, and I'm already, you know me, Linz, I'm fucking goth emo as hell.
Oh, anyway. I know. Yes.
So I'm already 15 and mopey and, I hadn't, not to overshare, but I hadn't fully descended into like cutting and self-harm and stuff yet, but those inclinations were already there.
Yeah.
So like it just it immediately became part of my DNA. It in a way that I'm not, other than Spider-Man, I'm not certain that anything else in my life ever has. I guess Star Wars probably is too, but those are the ones. I mean, they're just inseparable from who I am. And so then I'm sitting here constantly reading the news, constantly reading Entertainment Weekly and the trades and Hollywood Reporter and stuff. Find out, are they going to make this fucking movie or not? Or is it over? And then when I find out that they actually are making it and they're trying to finish it, I mean, I didn't even know what to think when I walked into the theater to watch this thing. I had no idea what it was going to be like.
No, I stayed away from it for a little while for that reason. I know because I was probably 12, 13 when all this happened. Like, I remember I had just seen the Bruce Lee story, which is a movie that, even though I don't even know if it's that great.
I love it. Just in case you're wondering, I fucking love Dragon, the Bruce Lee story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous and fictional, but I still think it's an amazing movie.
Yeah, I remember it impacted me a lot because that was the first Bruce Lee thing I'd ever seen. I'd go out, like, seek some of his other movies out and going, who was this guy? And then the news said, Bruce Lee's son Brandon has been killed in a tragic accident on set of this movie, and it was like, shit, and it just kind of all morphed into one for me. So I did stay away from it a little bit because I was like, well, I'm not sure if my little 12-year-old brain was like, for some reason thought you saw him die. I don't know. My brain wasn't, that's kind of where I was. And then when I was later got older as a teenager, it became a huge, like, sleepover movie. Every single time we would get together with friends, it was always Mallrats and The Crow. I don't know why. And it just sort of became that rotation. So I don't have the same connection. I mean, it sounds like it was just the perfect soup to create Mike Scott. Like, you love this actor, this tragic things happened, you're already getting into the sort of the goth scene, you're already going through some big emotions and some other stuff that is personal to you, and then this movie happens. And it's just kind of, it forms who you are. I have movies like that. They're not exactly that intense, I don't think. But it is... think because my partner also, he was a little bit older, and he has Brandon Lee ink because of this movie. It means so much to him. And when I still said, "Oh, I've got to watch The Crow," and he's like, "Okay, we're watching it together," which he really says when I say I'm doing a movie for a podcast. He's like, "Okay, cool, hun," thing. And all day he's been walking around, all week he's been walking around the house going, "Fire it up, pussies drink last." Even this morning, that's what he was doing. And I said, "Oh, you're just a sweet little goth boy who discovered The Crow," because I don't think he had seen Rapid Fire or anything like that. This was just a movie he just sort of discovered. And he's like, "I wouldn't have thought myself as goth," but I looked at my boyfriend who was wearing a black band t-shirt, jeans, and kind of tattoos everywhere, and I just looked at him and goes, "Yeah, you're right. Yeah, goth."
Yeah,
so,
I mean...
Yeah, it means... People who discovered it at the right time, it means so much to them. It's like... I don't know quite how to put it in words, but you did it perfectly when you talked about your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally listening to Bauhaus and Peter Murphy and Depeche Mode and all these bands at the time this comes out. But the thing to me that was so amazing is they fucking did it.
Yeah.
Like, they made a good movie out of it. All the bullshit, all the trauma, everything. And then they delivered that fucking movie. Like, they deliver a movie that satisfies and hits on almost every level. Like, it's a goddamn miracle. I am agnostic as fuck, but the existence of The Crow, the movie, is the one thing that might actually make me think there's a higher power out there, because the fact that that movie is so goddamn good is a goddamn miracle.
It really is. And it also kind of weirdly plays tribute to Brandon at the same time. I mean, you can kind of tell moments at the beginning when he's going through the flashbacks, and you can kind of you're not seeing his face, and he's doing the whole twisty turny things on the window and all that kind of thing. But that's just me nitpicking because I've seen too many movies. But they do play tribute to him. Every single time the camera is on him, it is like, look at this guy. Look how great he is. Like, seriously, look at him. I mean, he has the cheekbones, he has the smile, he has the movement. I mean, this guy knew how to move for the camera, which must be genetic because his dad also knew how to move for the camera. And it's just this kind of perfect encapsulation of worship for this guy, which is fitting because that's what that movie is as well. I mean, it was going to be that anyway, but because what happened just adds that extra layer of this movie. They made a good movie for him. He literally, unfortunately, he died for it. So make a good, if you're going to release it, make a good movie. And they really did. I mean, it is a magical movie.
Yeah, I mean, I love, one of the things I love so much is how long it takes for us to even, for Eric to even talk. He doesn't really say a word. You get the scene where he falls off the building and laughs, but then you really don't, he doesn't really say anything until he's got Tintin and he goes, murderer, that's like literally his first word in the entire movie. And it's so, again, I know I said cathartic a lot when we were talking about H2O, but it's so cathartic because it's this buildup, and then it's like Brandon is unleashed. And then you get the scene in the pawn shop, in Gideon's pawn shop, where everything that made Brandon is maybe more than any other scene in the movie. There's one other scene where I think, but it is so on display. I love, it's going to be hard for me to not just like talk about my favorite scenes and try and be more, but when he jumps up and then hangs from the ceiling and he's like, the way he just delivers, Mr. Gideon, you're not paying attention, and fucking knocks him on the face. Like, oh my God, it's everything Brandon could do well, and they used it to perfect effect.
Yeah, because the whole process of his character Eric, you're seeing him become more human. Like, he starts off as this ghostly figure that is running across buildings. He's more of a ghost, and by the time you get to the end of the movie, when he gets shot, he's human again for all intents and purposes. I can't remember when he says he goes, oh fuck or oh shit when he gets shot.
Yeah, he goes, oh fuck, and then
fuck.
Yeah,
and falls down. Yeah, it's such a great moment because you're like, oh, for all intents and purposes, he is now human.
Well, and you get the follow up when they're going up the stairs, and Ernie Hudson's like, "Okay, you go first," and he's like, "Yeah, we've got a problem with that," and he shows him that he's bleeding, and Ernie Hudson's like, "I thought you were like bulletproof," and Brandon's like, I'm not anymore. And so you're right. He's like totally, he's found his humanity again. He's not just this vessel of vengeance. He's somebody that realized that like even though he can't live, he's got things to live for, and more importantly, people that he needs to protect.
Yes.
Before he can go away.
Yeah, because when he's interacting with Tintin, he's just screaming murderer. Like, he doesn't know how to speak properly yet. I mean, that's such a visceral moment. But all he sees is Tintin, I need to kill you because you're a disgusting human being and you killed the love of my life, and I need to do this. And by the time you get to the end, he's got the kids, who's also called Sarah again, and Ernie Hudson, and he's got, oh no, I need to protect the living. It's not just about me getting revenge for the dead. It is actually me protecting the living. And I think it's such a gorgeous arc of the character in general.
Well, and that was actually one of the things they had to change when he died, because there was a whole subplot. I'm sure people know this, but there was a whole subplot with this whole other character called the Skull Cowboy, where the whole point was, if he helped anybody that wasn't directly involved in his mission of vengeance, he would lose his powers. So instead of the version that they came up with where Bai Ling shoots the crow, and that's what it's because he's going to rescue Sarah. And so he loses his powers. And, that was, but I think it still works the way they do it in the movie, because ultimately the end result is still the same. He has reclaimed his humanity. So when he does end this, he can go off and with Shelley and free. He's saved he hasn't just gotten vengeance. He has saved everybody that he needs to save. And that is so beautiful to me. That's one of the things that is so amazing about this movie.
It really is, and that sort of surprised me, because I hadn't seen it for a good couple of years, because every so often Dan would just go, the Crow's, if it's on streaming, let's just watch The Crow, and it hasn't been on any streaming at the moment. I now own this digitally, which I'm very happy about. So I can just like put it in front of them occasionally and go, let's just watch The Crow. And it is... But I forgot how much it is about him claiming his humanity again. Like, I always just remember the revenge part, and I forgot how beautiful human. I mean, David Patrick Kelly's death is horrific because it's a come to God moment for him. It's like oh no, I'm here to finally repent for my sins. So, because you always get
there ain't no coming back from that. There ain't no coming back from that. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, it's because they always have a little flashback of who he's dealing with and what they did on that particular night before he takes them. And I always got the feeling that was David Patrick Kelly remembering what he did that night and going, okay, this is when I finally have to pay for what I've done. I knew this wasn't going to last forever.
He quotes that line from Paradise Lost, right? A Bass the devil stood and understood how awful goodness was. And, and he's saying it in the flashback. He's saying it like, is this, he's going, does this get you hot? And then when he's sitting there looking at Eric, he's like literally crying as he says it, because he realizes like, God's wrath is terrifying.
Yes.
Like, that's the last fucking thing you want to see, asshole.
Yeah. And it is, and it's a gorgeous moment. I mean, Alex Proyas has had this ability to kind of subvert your expectations, and the fact that he was able to make. Okay, you could question to the end of time whether when an actor dies during a movie, should you finish it? I mean, this has happened with Fast 7. Was it Fast 7?
Yeah,
yes.
It was Fast 7. Yeah.
Fast 7. And they did a beautiful tribute to Paul Walker. But because the movie's essentially to make money, if you've invested this much money in it, you tend to have to finish it. And in '94, Miramax was going, "Oh no, we need to finish this movie. We've put this so much money in behind this; it needs to get done." And the fact that Alex was back to go, "Okay, I can still make this beautiful human movie that will pay tribute to Brandon, pay tribute to all the trauma that we've gone through, and still make this amazing movie that." Lives on. I mean, we will get into the sequels in a moment later on, but this movie is kind of like a preserved in amber movie. It is of its time, because of the music and of Brandon, how it's shot, the fact that it sort of started dimension on its kind of way of like, oh, this is how we make movies for kids or teenagers to into early 20s. It's kind of got everything. It's a miracle of a movie, even though it is built out of tragedy.
Yeah, and it's so funny because it's one of those movies that is so of its time. It's so specifically of its time.
Oh, so 1994.
that it almost becomes timeless, right?
Yes.
Because it's like, because Proyas shot everything on sets, and because there's so many practical effects and stuff in it, and because unfortunately Brandon died, he as an actor is preserved in amber. Everything about it is, to me, it's a timeless movie. When I first showed it to my wife, I don't know, 10 years ago, I mean, it was one of the first movies I showed her when we started dating. Probably the first, as you know, for years, I always watched this on Devil's Night.
Yes.
I did not rewatch it for this episode just because I did not want to fuck up my tradition of watching it on Devil's Night. But
I did check. I was like, is this going to fuck up your Devil's Night? And you're like, I've seen this so many times, I'm fine.
Yeah, I really just don't even need to. I don't. I could probably recite. I actually did when I first saw it back in the day. This is just a weird flashback memory that I had totally forgotten. In 94, we didn't have like MP3s and microphones. I had like an old school cassette recorder. I actually recorded myself trying to imitate Brandon's voice, quoting all his lines from the movie that I could do from memory because I had seen the damn movie so many times in the theater. This one's, like you said, it's a DNA movie. I mean, I am inseparable from this movie. But when I showed it to Kelsey, she didn't feel like it was dated. She didn't feel like, and in fact, it was the first Brandon Lee movie I showed her, and she was just like, who is this guy? Oh my God.
Yeah, because I think I was talking to Andy Gorham about it, and I sort of mentioned, is it sacrilege to say that I think Brandon has more charisma than his father? Which, to be fair, his father was Bruce Lee. I mean, his father was charisma just impersonated. I mean, when you can't take your eyes off Bruce, but there's something about Brandon that I think, I don't know. I think Brandon could have done anything in his career that he wanted to.
That's the thing. I don't think he necessarily has more charisma. I think they both have equal charisma, but Brandon absolutely had a far wider range.
That's it. That's what I was trying to say. He has a far wider range than his father, who is a legend. Still,
Brandon never even wanted to be an action star. He came up wanting to be an actor, and he actively avoided for a long time even trying to be an action star because he didn't want to be the son of Bruce Lee. And then the only way he could break in was to be the son of Bruce Lee. But his ambition was to do rom-coms. It was to do dramas. He didn't want to be the action star. And this was supposed to be his bridge to that because it gave him so much dramatic heft. The other scene that just fucking kills me and is just so beautiful is the one where Ernie Hudson's in his apartment with his hat on, and Eric comes to see him, and he's like, "You still have your hat on?"
Yes.
And and he smokes a cigarette, and he's like, "Shelley always used to tell me these would kill me, and nothing's trivial." But the line that kills me is when Ernie Hudson says, "Are you gonna just disappear?" And Brandon says, he has this sad look on his face, and he goes, "I thought I'd use your front door." And that just, I don't know why that line just destroys me. But it goes back to that sort of thesis we have of he's regaining his humanity. He's not going to just magically appear. This is his friend. He's going to just walk out the front door and down the hallway like a human again. God damn it. I know I bawled when we did Spider-Man 2. I'm holding it together for this one, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to for much longer.
No, I know. I completely understand because there's little moments, and he is so good at creating the because I sort of, especially when he's in the pawn shop with Gideon, he's got a Joker-esque quality about him, which is very fitting for 94. But again, it feels timeless because Brandon is able to bring this kind of pathos of, I need information from you. I know you're connected to the guys and I need to take. So I need you to pay attention to me because I need you to survive and go tell people. He's doing about 6 different things in that scene. It's remembering Shelley because he's trying to find the engagement ring. It's him causing absolute chaos and being the Crow. And it's also him kind of playing the in-between moments as well. I don't know. I can't overemphasize how good he is in this movie. Without him in it, I don't think it'd be as good. And I think Proyas did such a smart thing of not letting him speak, not seeing him properly, which is functions because of what happened. Purely so you don't get a good look at him until certain moments, and then you slowly realize his humanity. It is a really beautiful way of doing it. And yes, like a lot of movies, it was done out of necessity. It wasn't done because that was the plan. It was something terrible has happened. We need to finish this movie. How do I do that in the best possible way? Which is what filmmakers do a lot. It's just they don't do it with this sense of tragedy. And to still honor him, I don't know. If it was another filmmaker, I can't imagine it, or not the right filmmaker, I don't know if it would have turned out as well.
No, I agree, and you actually nailed it. That scene alone in Gideon's pawn shop, I think, is such a perfect encapsulation of everything that makes this movie work, and Brandon's performance, because he breaks through the window, and he's, like you said, he's the Crow. He does the whole, you heard me rapping, did you not?
Yeah.
But then when he starts going through the rings, he's like, no, and he finds Shelley's ring, and just the pain on his face, the sadness. But then when he comes back out and Gideon tells him the names of all the people, and he's like, oh, T-Bird, Fun Boy, a bunch of jolly pirates with a bunch of jolly nicknames. And he starts, and then he goes, he's full rage at that point. The amount of, just in like a 5-minute scene, the amount of emotions that he goes through is staggering to me. It's such a tremendous career-defining performance for a guy who never got to have a career. I mean, that's just such the tragedy of this movie. This is literally the kind of performance where you're like, this is a movie star, even though I think Rapid Fire is really when it's a movie star being born. But this is the performance where it's like, this guy, the sky's the limit for this guy. This is Keanu in Speed. This is George Clooney in From Dusk Till Dawn. This is the career, and he never got to have it. But at least we have this, and that's something.
And it is a showcase of everything he could do, because he can be very funny in that. As you mentioned, when he sort of just says to Ernie Hudson, you still have your hat on. Because you're watching that scene and goes, why does he have his hat on? And then the movie acknowledges it's like, yeah, why are you wearing a hat? And it's not why, it's you've still got your hat on. It's like, because he can't leave the job at home. I think that's what it's meant to do. It's like he's still a cop, even at home in his underwear. But it is, everything he does in this movie is just sort of amazing. And then when you see him interact with everyone else, it is sort of a gorgeous thing to watch. Like, I still love the scene when he's with Dora? No. Darlene. No. The mother. Darla. Finally got there.
Mother is the name for God on the lips and hearts of our children.
Yes. And he literally takes out her heroin. And I mean, I love the fact that his powers are never really defined. It's like, he is the Crow, he can do anything until he can't. It's kind of cool. And he's always speaking in these very amazing kind of rhymes and riddles and quotes, biblical, Paradise Lost, all those kind of things. I mean, this is what I love about, we'll get into The Crow, is that it brings all together all the storytelling ways. Like, it's pure storytelling. But when he's doing that, and then the scene with her and Sarah in the kitchen, and Sarah realizing, oh, I shouldn't mock her because I'm not going to get breakfast, I'm going to lose this moment of having a mother, is heartbreaking and amazing. You're like, oh, wow, she's going to be okay. Like, she might actually be okay after this. I mean, she's at the depths of the bottom. She has this interaction with the Crow who's like, you need to be there for your daughter. She's missing you. She's out on the streets looking for you. I think it's such a sad and beautiful line.
Yeah, no, and actually a little bit of trivia. So do you know why after that scene, Eric has electrical taped around his hands and waist for the rest of the movie?
No, what happened?
So one of the things they had to cut is, because you remember that's the whole point. He shoots Funboy in the leg, puts him in the shower, and then he takes Darla's heroin out.
Yeah.
Well, in the original script, the whole thing is, again, if he's saving somebody that's not on his path of vengeance, he loses his power. So Funboy wakes up and slashes him with a razor, and so Eric has to duct tape all his slashes together. Now, it still works in the movie because this movie is none more goth, so it's like, sure, he just put electrical tape around his hands and waist because it looks cool. But it is an interesting thing because it does follow into that sort of bigger thesis of he's trying to save people. And in the original script, that's not his mission. That's not his job. His job is vengeance, but he's Eric Draven. He can't not save people. And so I don't know that the original movie would have been better. I have a hard time imagining it could have been because this movie is so fucking perfect. But there is a lot of that undercurrent under there that I think makes it, that makes those, if you know that backstory, that makes that scene even more powerful. Of he's sacrificing his powers for Darla because he cares so much about Sarah that he wants her to go home and be a mother.
Yes, it is. No, that makes it even more powerful because he wants to help Sarah because he was also in love with Shelley, who is meant to be the most pure person in the world, because that's all Shelley did. When everything you learn about it in the movie, she was going up against Michael Wincott, who we haven't even touched on yet. Oh my god, this cast. And trying to help the people in these like broken down building society that people forgotten, and it's just criminals just hassling them all the time. And also semi-adopted Sarah because Darla wasn't there. And he's still got that remembrance of that. Like, the line that always kills me is the nothing is trivial. When he sort of speaks about Shelley, it's like, everything I thought she cared about things that were trivial, but there's nothing is trivial. Everything in the moment matters. And that was a line that really got me this time. I was like, okay.
I mean, I can't watch this movie without bawling. Like, it just never, and you've got I mean, I guess we can get into it a little more later, but just the perfect use of music in this, because the way Graham Revell works It Can't Rain All the Time into the actual score. So you don't, like that scene when he says nothing is trivial, you get an instrumental version of It Can't Rain All the Time behind it. And oh my God, it just wrecks me. I have seen this movie 100 times and it never doesn't wreck me.
No, it is. And music is so important to this movie. And I'm not just talking about the soundtrack, which every goth boy with their Salt 94 still has that CD of the soundtrack.
I do.
I know you do. I mean, it's a soundtrack that will just suddenly get played in my house. I'm like, oh yeah, Crow. It is so, yes, it's got that soundtrack that is just perfect for it, but also it is the actual instrumental score. And it is so important to this movie. And it makes it incredibly 90s, and now it makes it incredibly timeless. And I don't know how that works, because I've seen movies that have an incredibly mid-90s soundtrack, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. This one works, and it feels timeless, and I don't know why. I mean, this is Nine Inch Nails. It is... I should actually bring up the friggin' soundtrack, but it is such a 1994 soundtrack, and I don't understand.
Nine Inch Nails, The Cure, Stone Temple Pilots, My Life with fucking Thrill Kill Cult.
Yeah.
Machines of Loving Grace. It's so fucking 90s.
How is it this timeless though? I mean, I can name a few movies, Daredevil for one, that the music sticks out. I'm like, oh God, I remember that time. But this one, it feels timeless, and I don't know if it's just because I've lived with it more or what, but yeah.
I don't think that's the case. I think it's the case, first of all, of the soundtrack producers picked some, even though they were 90s bands, they picked some really good fucking bands. They got The Cure to drop, in my opinion. I think The Cure is a pretty timeless band to begin with, but they got them to drop a top 5 Cure song for this album, and then use it in a montage that is fucking perfect because the way Burn is used in this movie is because I had gotten the soundtrack. This was back when soundtracks would sometimes come out before the movie. I had gotten the soundtrack before the movie, and I'd listened to it, and I was trying to picture where in the movie these songs could pop up. And when Burn pops up, when Eric is putting the face paint on, because I was like, because there's that line in Burn where Robert Smith says, "So paint your face and shadow smile," and I'm like, oh, is this gonna be like when he becomes the Crow? That would be so awesome. And then I'm fucking watching it, and literally as he's painting his face, you hear Robert Smith going, "So paint your face with shadow smile."
Yeah.
And I like lost my shit in the theater. And then you get Nine Inch Nails covering a great Joy Division song.
Yeah.
You get Stone Temple Pilots' Big Empty, which is, I just think, an all-timer song. I mean, I'm a big Stone Temple Pilots fan. I think,
Me too.
I think it's timeless because the songs are fucking good.
Yeah.
And that's just really, you get a soundtrack like Daredevil, which, I mean, look, I kind of think Evanescence's song is pretty goddamn timeless, but everything else on that soundtrack, they're not good. It's not a good soundtrack. This soundtrack is fucking good, and good songs will always transcend genre and fads and stuff like that.
Yeah, it really does. Because I'm just looking at it like, Jesus and the Mary Chain. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to listen to this album after this, aren't I? Yeah, I am. But yeah, you're right. It does. They chose good songs. They chose it at the right time, and it's kind of seamless within the world. I think you're right. With Daredevil, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb because you're like, oh yeah, I do kind of like that Evanescence song as well. But that's more of a secret kind of. I'll just listen to that on the quiet. But yeah, it is. It's just part of the world that they're in. It's if you're like Strange Days, they do. Catherine Bigelow does a very similar thing with the music. Everything just kind of fits in with the world. It's not about choosing music that they think is going to be a hit, even though they did that with Burn. It's more about, okay, what is this movie? What is the vibe? How are these actual song choices going to fit in? Now, I know I'm much of a sucker for an obvious needle drop. I tend to like them more than a lot of other people. They can get annoying on me, especially depending on the song. Like, if you're in the if you're doing a Vietnam movie and Run Through the Jungle, I'm going to roll my eyes. But at the same time, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm in the mood for that song. So yeah, I think you're right. It all depends if I like the song or not.
Well, and you know that you and I are actually kind of on the opposite end of that.
Yes, I was going to say.
Fucking hate needle drops. Because I am of the opinion that and this is actually perfect. This is a perfect movie. I'm actually just going to trot this movie out when people ask me why I don't like needle drops, because I am of the belief that for a needle drop to work in a movie, it doesn't have to be diegetic. It doesn't actually have to be part of the world, but it needs to at least feel like songs that the characters and the world of the movie would actually be listening to. There are a couple of diegetic songs in this, like the My Life with Thrill Cult one is, that's actually played in the movie, but like Burn's not. But I fucking believe for 100% that Eric Draven listens to Burn. Like, Eric Draven absolutely listens to The Crow. You know who he doesn't listen to? Fucking Hall & Oates. And that's the problem I have with a lot of needle drops lately is they're the director's Spotify playlists.
Yeah.
Not the character's Spotify playlists. This movie is 100% the character's Spotify playlists.
You're right. Because they make a very specific point of saying Eric Draven was a musician. He was in a band. And the fact that he still has his guitar around randomly sometimes, it's a detail I adore, especially when he sees Sarah for the first time. He's got his guitar on his back, and that's when he sort of says the line, it can't rain all the time. And then she goes, wait, Eric? I love that kid so much. I mean, she is very precocious street kid, but I think she is kind of the perfect conduit, the audience surrogate for this movie. Like, she's the kind of the one that's seeing with fresh eyes and sort of understanding the importance of Eric coming back and kind of fixing her life.
Well, and she's a tension breaker the movie so desperately needs. I mean,
yes.
both she and Ernie Hudson are really, obviously they have very serious dramatic roles, but they're also kind of the comic relief of the movie. And the movie's so one of the things about the graphic novel is there's I don't want to say there's very little comic relief in the graphic novel. And so it is almost overwhelmingly depressing, but it's a graphic novel. You can stop reading it if you want. You can't really do that with a movie. So this movie so desperately needs some characters who can be some tension relief. It's kind of Skank is sort of the same way. I don't love Skank, but I do appreciate that they're trying to use him to break the tension, because otherwise, man, this would be a Brian Bertino movie without those characters.
Skank's dead. Yes. No, you're right. I think it does. And I think it adds, this whole movie is about humanity, but if you didn't have Ernie Hudson or Sarah, I think, it would just be like I thought I needed a hug beforehand, but now I just need to lie down kind of movie, which is what I feel after watching a Brian Bertino movie.
I'm not a Brian Bertino fan. I'm well on record as actually hating Brian Bertino movies. So not to take a side shot at Brian Bertino, but I need to fill this world is so oppressive and depressing. The only way this works is if I believe Eric has something to fight for, and in Sarah and in Albrecht, he finds something to fight. They are the hope of this crap sack, sad ass fucking world that's raining all the goddamn time. They are the reason it can't rain all the time. And that's what Eric is fighting for.
Exactly. They are sort of the hope that going forward that things can get better. Which is kind of what I love about this movie is that, yes, it is goth as all hell. The fact that, Lee has masking tape, which now I know why he does, but the fact that he just has masking tape anyway, just these kind of goth moments, but it's also gothic. I think Alex Proyas has a very good understanding of what gothic is. It is very gothic, and it's also very fairy tale. Even Ernie Hudson refers to Eric as a fairy godfather and Snow White. All these kind of references to storytelling tropes throughout, the fact that John Polito has to go and tell the others what is going on. It's all about storytelling. And I only realized it sort of watching this one because you sort of get distracted by all the goth in it. But I'm going, because they're in this destroyed, dilapidated city that's very gothic. Because nature hasn't taken over, but it's other parts of the city that's taken over parts of the other kind of city. It's all kind of brick and fire and wood and metal once you get into Michael Wincott's base of operation. But he sort of has this really cool understanding of what gothic is. And that's really cool because people kind of think it's either just goth or gothic or fairy tale something else, and you don't see those elements woven together very often.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but that is actually something I just put that together. That the only living things in this movie is in terms of plants or vegetation or trees is in the cemetery.
Yeah.
That's really the only place where anything lives. Everything else is metal and stone and wood, like you said. I've never even put that together. Lindsay kind of just blew my mind here. I got to be honest with you. That I'd never even put that together. That the place where we go to die is actually the place where stuff lives in this shit ass world.
That's where you first see the crow as well. Is in the graveyard when Eric's coming out. It is, and then even when Sarah goes, I know you're going to tell me not to sleep in the graveyard in the middle of the night. And he's like, well, it's the safest place to be. It kind of is, because they're already dead. No one can hurt you in a graveyard. It's already done that. So, it's, and it happens a little bit in Dark City as well. He's weaving together the noir and the gothic as well, which are very, very similar, because they all come from German Expressionism anyway. And I was just sort of going, oh, wow, there's this really cool undertone of the storytelling. Erica's constant, and characters constantly quoting older literature. Even he walks in doing Poe at one stage. I'm like, well, yes, because he's a crow, raven, crow, different birds, but it's a kind of similar idea of something coming back. Your sins, you were going to have to face your sins eventually, which was a big Poe thing. So I'm just this is such a literate movie. I love it.
The other big one is when he quotes the absolutely terrible Andrew Jackson famous quote for us here in the U.S. But when he says, "I see you've made your decision. Now let's see you enforce it."
Oh, is that from Andrew Jackson? I did not realize.
Yeah, no. So you not being from the U.S. here, there was a very, very big, god-awful, horrible, monstrous president, Andrew Jackson. When the Supreme Court ruled against him, he famously said, "I see Chief Justice Marshall has made his decision. Now let's see him enforce it," which is not to make it all political, but that's literally, that's the Trump playbook, right? Challenge the so it's a bit weird that we like that line in The Crow because it's and I'm sure the writers just thought it sounded like a great line, and in the context of the movie
it's amazing.
It's fucking incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Yeah, I love it in the movie. I wish I didn't know where it came from, but I do love it in the movie.
I have been quoting that line all week, I'm not gonna lie. But I knew, there's a reason why Trump kept having friggin' Andrew Jackson portraits around him. I knew he was kind of a monster, especially with the Trail of Tears and all that kind of stuff. But I did not know that line. That's fascinating. Wow. Yeah, that is very, very cool. But no, I do love that line, and that scene in the boardroom is, oh my God, it's so kick-ass. He just gets shot like multiple times, then goes hides under the table and starts pulling people under. It's an incredible scene.
Well, and again, at the time this came out, I'm ass deep in discovering Hong Kong cinema.
Yeah.
And so the fact that Proyas and stunt coordinator Jeff Amata and Chad Stahelski, who's Brandon's double, they go.
Shit! I did not know.
Oh
that.
Yeah, you didn't know that? Oh
No!
Yeah, no. When like the scene you were talking about where he's like swinging out of the, when it's not him, they had to shoot a double. It was Chad Stahelski.
Oh, okay. So this is a guy who's just like literally been in the bones of American action movies for the past like over 30 years. Okay, that explains everything. Yeah.
So, but when they go in that shootout, they go full fucking Hong Kong.
Yeah.
I lose my shit every time. Brandon's dual wielding, and then and then when he grabs the sword and he's just like, "You're all gonna die." Like, oh my God, what a fucking action scene right there. Like action directors literally could spend their entire careers and not make an action scene as good as that one.
No, and it kind of comes out of nowhere. I mean, it is building to that, so it does fit with the movie. Like, you're really seeing what the Crow is capable of during that scene. You've gotten hints and everything like that, like especially in the pawn shop and everything like that. And then he just sort of comes in, stands on the table, goes, "Hey guys, how's it going?" and does the Andrew Jackson line, and then all of a sudden it all kicks off. And I do love how the fact that like Michael Wincott showing off and just basically saying, "Whoever this guy is, I'm gonna take him down," goes to his like vault and just shows all the swords, and I'm just like, yeah, that tracks. That guy would have that collection. And the first thing the Crow does is he just like goes, "I'm grabbing a sword, you're all gonna die," and they do. He literally kills nearly every single person in the room except for Michael Wincott and his sister.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and Tony Todd,
Todd, yeah.
Yeah, but just destroys them, and it's such a release because so much of this movie is so oppressively depressing that to see him, the pacing of this movie in terms of sadness versus cathartic release, sadness versus nice humor release, sadness versus cathartic release is so well paced and maintained. It's really, I think, just again, like I said, going back to what I said at the start, it's a miracle. I mean, this movie has no business. It shouldn't even exist. And if it does exist, it should be shitty. And so the fact that it's neither one of those things and it instead is a tremendous achievement in filmmaking, can only be a miracle. I mean, I have no other way to describe it.
No, I mean, yeah, and that is because the rest of the cast does help. I mean, we've talked about a lot of Ernie Hudson, and Rochelle Davis, who I think played Sarah. They are the kind of the hope. They're the kind of ones you gravitate toward. But then you have everyone else. I mean, Tony Todd is the coolest motherfucker in the room. He's amazing in it. I mean, this is only 2 years, or maybe even he went probably straight from the Candyman to that. You have David Patrick Kelly You have Michael goddamn Wincott. I mean, his hair in this movie.
I mean, we gotta talk about Wincott because
oh my God.
he is exactly the perfect opposite of Brandon in this, because where Brandon is all painful humanity and torment, Wincott is Joker level unhinged, and that is such a perfect contrast. The way he's just like, Wincott just cracks me up every time in this when he's like, Skank, how do you feel? He's like, I feel like a little worm on a big fucking hook. You feel like a little worm on a big fucking hook? Well, your mom must be pretty goddamn proud of you, boy. Like, he's just, but I love that he's constantly like, also, he's got this drive, where Eric has this drive to protect the people that he loves. Top Dollar has this drive to have fun.
Yes.
Are we gonna have some fun again, and again, it pays off so well, because you get the end of when Top Dollar's literally kicked Eric's ass, and he's like, well, if it's any consolation, you've put a smile on my face. And then just, again, another line that just kills me. I've got something for you. Head, hand on heads, 30 hours of pain, 30 hours at once, all for you. And oh my God, but that scene doesn't work if Wincott isn't so goddamn hilariously monstrous throughout the entire movie. Yeah, he has to be that awful. For us to feel the joy that we get when Eric just pumps Shelley's death right into his head.
Yes, I mean, that is a really, really great moment, because I love when you first meet him and his half-sister have literally just killed a woman. Like, they've done something awful to her. And I love the fact that it is nothing but this deranged pleasure that drives him. I mean, even when I
think we broke her.
I think we broke the head. It's just like, oh. And when when Crow's on the conference table, and they're just sort of talking about how he wants to kill Skank, and he's like, well, that's not going to happen. And he goes, okay, right, I'm already bored with this conversation, end him. And then just all the bullets flail at him. And then he drops, he's like, oh, what about that? He is the worst person in the world. He is just all about what he feels in that particular moment, which is such a great contrast to the Crow, who has to learn not to be in the moment and kill the people who killed his fiancée, but he has to learn how to be human again. And it's... So when you do get to that moment when he shows, again, his coming to God moment for Michael Wincott is when he sees what happened to Shelley and the 30 hours that she hung on for, I think is such a great moment to take him out. It's kind of perfect for his character. It's kind of making him finally realizing the pain he's caused other people, and it's causing him pain, which I think is perfect.
Well, and it's actually one way that, this is relatively accurate to the comic book, but this is actually one way in which I think the movie, what Top Dollar gets, and it's actually not Top Dollar in the comic, it's T-Bird. They swapped the names around. But what Top Dollar gets in the movie is, to me, so much more satisfying than what happens to him in the comic book. So this is one way I think the movie actually improves on the comic.
Yeah, because it is all about humanity. That's all it is. It's just about doing the decent thing. Because when Crow's when he's killing Tintin, it is all about a vicious, violent death. And then when he times to get to Top Dollar, it's about, no, see what you did. See what your actions have caused other people. See how that feels for once. It is all about empathy, which is such an amazing arc for a movie that is so goth and so about depression. And just from personal experience, when about depression, I get so self-involved. Like, it's kind of like I can't see the outer world at any point. It's just there's too much pain for me to even consider looking out. And this is a movie that is actually about looking out and seeing what other people are doing and appreciating the grass in the graveyard.
Yeah, no, and that's actually what I think is a fascinating contrast, because I'm with you, as you know, Linz, I've had a god-awful year.
Yes.
And certainly have not been in my best place. And I turn inward. I can't, that's one of the things depression does do to you.
Yeah.
lose your ability to think or care about other people because you're just trying so goddamn hard to even muster up the energy to care about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And what's so fascinating to me about the comic versus the movie is the comic, because of Obar's wife dying, it's a comic that's born out of anger. It's born out of a man that's angry at God, the world, the universe that took this love from him. And so the comic is incredibly angry. The movie, I think, was probably going to be that, but then Brandon died.
Yes.
So what it became instead was a movie born out of love and empathy and a desire to pay tribute to this, magical human being that we all lost too soon. And I think that really is what makes the movie so special is everybody involved in it knew what they were doing. Maybe not when they started filming it, but when they finished it, they knew what they were doing. And this was going to be a movie about love.
Yeah, because I haven't read too much into Brandon Lee, but from what I have read, he apparently was a delight and got along with mostly everyone.
Yeah, he was apparently an amazing human being.
Yeah, the only pushback I think he put on The Crow was that there was an Asian character who could steal his power or something. There was a Asian mysticalness thing to it, and he said he didn't want it because it was a stereotype on the Asian community, and which is great because he's standing up for his Asian heritage. So it's so that was the one thing he went, okay, I don't want to do that, and everything else you could tell he's putting in 110% into everything he's doing. And just listening to I got obsessed with Veep, and so I was listening to the podcast they were doing on Veep, and they were sort of saying when you have the number one on the call sheet putting everything into it, that's when everyone else in the crew will do the same. And so when you have Brandon Lee, who's obviously giving everything 110% when he's on set, when he died, I think everyone just kind of mustered up and went, okay, we need to do this for him. This is something that he might not have even gone into The Crow thinking, okay, this is a stepping stone, this is going to get... I mean, he might not have been that passionate for it, but because he just puts everything into it, everyone else kind of rallied behind it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful sentiment when you're watching it.
Yeah, and the other issues, if you've ever read any of the behind-the-scenes stuff, he was...
A lot of cocaine.
Well, and he was difficult on set because the set, they kept fucking up.
Yeah.
And he kept trying, and then the end result is the most horrifying result possible. He was trying to make it a safe set. And the end result is, exactly why you have to have a safe set.
No, it's work in safety. If you don't have a safe set and if you don't know where things are, people get hurt. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to making a movie, especially when you're making something that has guns. I mean, if there aren't systems in place, which is why there are systems in place, people get hurt. And we've just seen that recently, even just a few years ago, when as soon as people get lax, accidents happen. And there's a set is like a construction site. It's not just listening, you go on, you have a good time, you sit down, you do whatever. There's so many pieces of equipment around, even if you're not making a violent movie.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly it, and so it's one of those things where he was, they were making him, he was sick, he had the flu, they were making him film while he had the flu. Just it was a shitty set all around. And so again, going back to that sort of miracle thing that they were able to come back and actually make the movie that they made, but it was a tragedy waiting to happen. And all I can say is I would happily give up this movie for us to have had the last 25 years of Brandon Lee's career, as much as I love this movie. But we don't have that. What we do have is this movie, and this movie is, I think, beautiful and moving and amazingly kick-ass, and just, one of the best things that cinema has. I'm overstating it. I mean, I know the movie's got problems, but for me, one of the best things that cinema has ever created.
It is, but as you said, this is a DNA movie for you, and sometimes those movies just hit. I could say the same thing about Scream for me. When I was 16, it hit at a perfect time. Again, was a sleepover, And I didn't know a movie could do the things that Scream did. I didn't know you could be scary and funny at the same time. I thought, because most horror comedies lean toward one or the other. I hadn't seen Evil Dead 2 yet, so I didn't know that they blended so well. But that was Scream for me. There's a few other movies where I'm just like, yeah, this is kind of who helped create the person you see in front of you. And for you, that is The Crow. Some movies just do that. I think those are important movies to acknowledge, and you can just be hyper effervescent about it because that's a DNA movie for you. There's no point in sort of going, well, yeah, I know it's not perfect. Yeah, but it's perfect to you because that made you.
You know what? That's exactly the best way to describe it. It may not be a perfect movie, but it's perfect to me. And like you said, because it was a perfect storm of this actor and then this comic that I loved and then this movie, it's perfect to me. I mean, I saw it, God, I probably saw it 12 times in the theater. And you know, that was actually a great summer. That was summer of 94 because this came out, I want to say, in April, and then Speed came out in June, and they were both in the, you know, I saw them both at the big theater, but then I used to have this dollar theater by my house, and they were both in the dollar theater at the same time. So I'd literally just, for like 2 weeks, just alternate. One day I'd go see The Crow, the other day I'd go see Speed. One day I'd go see Crow, the other day I'd go see Speed.
And that's Michael Scott was born.
I mean, honestly, kinda, yeah. Like, kinda fucking, yeah. I mean, that really, that like month there was maybe everything you need to know about me is included in those two movies. And then you jump forward a few years and you get Spider-Man 2. But if you watch those three movies, that's everything you need to know about me. I have nothing else to tell you interesting if you watch those three movies.
Pretty much. But 94, I just want to alliterate, was a hell of a year. It's like 1984. But yeah, you have New Nightmare. You have, of course, The Crow, Pulp Fiction, Stargate.
Fucking Lion King.
Natural Born Freaking Killers. Interview with a Vampire. Quiz Show, which is very underrated drama, but it is kind of incredible. It is just one of those years where you just look at what was released and you're like, holy shit. It was just, it's kind of one of those movie years where you realize that everything just comes together and it's just a perfect encapsulation of like, oh my God, we were so spoiled. I mean, we are going to get, we're still going to get years like that. I don't think that's going to go away when you just realize that, wow, you know, Malignant and something else came out in the same year. That was a good movie year. And you always look back at that and realize how good you had it. But 94 was a hell of a year. I mean, movie stars were born. I mean, Keanu was, Keanu was kind of still big, but he was indie big. I think it was kind of Speed that everyone just went, well, hello.
It was the birth of Keanu action star because he had done Point Break.
Yeah.
Right. But nobody really came out of Point Break in 92 thinking Keanu's going to be a big action star. Speed was the one where he really and actually changed action stars because Speed was the one that sort of perfected the John McClane Die Hard model of bringing a real actor in, making them hit the gym, you know, because after that you get Broken Arrow and you get you know, Hard Rain, and you get these actors now getting in shape and becoming action stars, and really Keanu in Speed, I'm sure somebody's going to be pedantic and disagree with me, but in my opinion, as somebody who's old enough to have actually fucking been there when these movies came out, Keanu in Speed was really the first to create that template.
Kids, you don't understand how good you had it in the mid-90s going to the movies. I mean, from 94 to 99, it was just... And this is when I was going to the movies, to be fair. So I am remembering this in nostalgia, but every single time you went, it was just a banger. It was just... No, actually, not all bangers, but it was just a feast of wonders. And yeah, this is kind of where Dimension got its start. I mean, debate thing, but without that, you would have never gotten Scream. You would have never gotten all this kind of amazing kind of things. And it also started with this movie being a hit. Now, the sad thing is, I don't know if it would have been as big a hit if Brandon had not tragically died, because there was that morbid curiosity about it. But they made a really good movie, so people would just go and watching this like you, going, holy shit, what am I watching?
Well, and I think that was the thing is, I think there was the morbid curiosity initially, but they delivered on the movie.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way. It only made, I want to say it made about $45-50 million at the box office. It might have made that just out of morbid curiosity. We would not be talking about The Crow in the year of our Lord 2022 had they not delivered on the movie.
Yes, it would have been that weird curiosity of that great actor who could have been died, but then the movie would have been largely forgotten. But it keeps coming back. It keeps, because it meant they delivered on the movie and it hit a lot of people at the right time where they just went, oh my God, this is everything I love and I want. And they did it in a way that it feels, as you said, it's so specific to 94 or 93, 94 when they were shooting it. But it feels timeless when you're watching it now. It's that amazing specificity that gives it its timelessness. And that is a very hard thing to pull off.
Yeah, absolutely. We were going to talk about the sequels, but I'll just be honest, they all kind of suck.
They do.
I like Salvation because I think Eric Mabius actually makes a pretty good Crow. And I like Stairway to Heaven because it's got Mark Dacascos, which is the TV show. It's not a sequel. But The Crow Wicked Prayer with fucking Edward Furlong as the Crow is just absolutely absurd. That is just a patently absurd movie.
It is. Yeah, I haven't seen the sequels in a very, very long time. And I'm not entirely sure I want to go back and visit them. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this movie because I know how much it means to you.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. And thank you for giving me an excuse to rewatch H2O as well, because I fucking loved rewatching H2O. Like, I have had a great time thinking about that movie this week and talking with you about it. So,
no, thank you for taking the time because I know you're really busy at the moment. But before we go quickly, please tell people where they can find your good work.
Yeah, you can find me personally at Hibachi Justice on Twitter and Letterboxd, and then you can follow Action for Everyone on Twitter at A4E Podcast. That's the letter A, the number 4, the letter E Podcast, and you can find it anywhere podcast apps or anywhere you can get your podcasts. We're pretty much everywhere. We are doing a month, depending on when this releases, we're doing a month of action horror movies that we're talking about. So at the time we're recording, we're going to do Versus, and then I can spoil this. After that, we're doing Dog Soldiers. After that, we are doing the Blade trilogy. And then after that, we are, knock on wood, going to have a very special, very, very special guest to talk about The Night Comes for Us.
Well, I hope that all comes because The Night Comes for Us is a masterful movie, and that sounds like an amazing, amazing lineup. So fingers crossed everything goes according to plan.
Fingers crossed. I never assume until when we had Bernhardt, we literally weren't sure that we were going to have him until he logged into the Zoom. So, but no, Lindsay, I fucking love talking to you so much. This was so wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, it's always a blast. And thank you for listening to Shock and Awe. As usual, Shock and Awe 1, Twitter and Instagram. And also, if you want to follow me, it's Reading Geek. I've been enjoying this series way more than I thought. And thank you so much for coming on. It's always a blast hanging out. Truly. We will be back with another Michael Myers double feature. I think actually after this we are going. Actually, no, we are doing Resurrection. I keep thinking I'm recording that tomorrow, and then we'll be going on to Rob Zombie. But it's as usual. It's an absolute pleasure, and thank you much. We'll be back. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.